Chapter 52. Time flowed like water, and in the blink of an eye, today's competition had already ended. The curtain of night quietly came, and the bustling cloud-state city lit up with specks of light. In the cultivation room, Chun Hao sat cross-legged. His entire body was enveloped in a dense qi that was like water ripples, causing his figure to look as if it was constantly twisting and changing. If Elder Shao and Shao Ding were here, they would definitely be indescribably shocked. Huff! Right at this moment, Chen Hao slowly opened his eyes. His pair of eyes flickered with a faint trace of pleasant surprise, and he let out a long breath. Profound ice qi, the derivative energy of the water attribute of the 5 element. It's probably because I comprehended the profound ice qi that I was able to easily comprehend the water attribute energy, because of Helian Wuzi. Chun Hao gazed at the dense qi that was currently slowly merging into his dantian, and muttered to himself. This dense qi wasn't origin power, nor was it the profound ice qi that Chun Hao had comprehended. It was the water attribute energy. Even Chun Hao didn't expect that the battle with Helian Wuzi would actually allow him to obtain such a huge harvest. Merely through the trace of water attribute energy that Helian Wuzi had left in his dantian, he was able to comprehend it. Moreover, it naturally merged with the profound ice qi. Following Chun Hao's thoughts, the 2 types of energy that were originally of the same origin could actually be converted at will. What made Chun Hao even more pleasantly surprised was that this kind of gentle, and nourishing water attribute energy possessed an extremely shocking healing effect. In less than 4 hours, all the injuries on Chun Hao's body had completely disappeared. Moreover, Chun Hao clearly felt that there was a trace of subtle change in his state of mind. It was as if his senses towards the energy of heaven and earth had become even more sensitive. With every breath he took, he could sense the faint water attribute energy. This kind of feeling was very wonderful. It made Chun Hao's body and mind feel as if they had merged into heaven and earth, and he could feel the pulse of heaven and earth. Unknowingly, a trace of understanding appeared in Chun Hao's heart. Bang! Without any warning, Chun Hao struck out with his palm. The fiery red and violent yuan qi instantly surged out. But it was only for a moment, as if it had turned into a nimble and gentle flame. Its speed instantly slowed down. It was like a gentle breeze blowing over the surface of the water, gently hitting the solid rock wall, seemingly without any destructive power. But at this moment, Chun Hao's palm suddenly trembled. Boom! The gentle waves suddenly turned into roiling waves of anger, fiercely slamming against the stone wall. Immediately, stone fragments swirled in the air. The entire training room violently shook several times following Chun Hao's palm. Junior brother Xiao Mei, who was sitting cross-legged on Chun Hao's bed, felt the huge commotion coming from the cultivation room. She immediately pushed open the door to the cultivation room. When she saw the spirited Chun Hao, she said in surprise, "Your injuries have healed? More or less. I'll definitely be fine tomorrow. I think you'll be fine now." Xiao Mei stared at the stone fragments that had yet to scatter, as well as the deep palm print on the wall. Her charming eyes carried a trace of surprise as she said this. Low-key. Senior sister, they should be back. Let's go eat, you support me. Xiao Mei curled her lips, but still held on to Chun Hao's arm. The more she interacted with him, the more Xiao Mei felt that Chun Hao's astonishing talent, especially the talent of his physical body. It was far beyond what ordinary people could reach. Xiao Mei naturally understood Chun Hao's meaning, so she could only follow along with this guy's act. Of course, she was quite satisfied that Chun Hao didn't act in front of her. Awesome brother, you're my idol. Helian Wuzi was even taken care of by you. You're really too awesome. When Chun Hao and Xiao Mei rushed to the dining room, Xiao Jishan, this boorish man, had a face full of admiration and envy as he grabbed Chun Hao's shoulder and praised him. "Xiang Hao, you're the best." Lil Ling and the other girls also did not hesitate to surround him and praise him. The taciturn Xiao Jifei's eyes also shone with admiration. Some of the inner disciples of the Xiao family also came over and asked about Chen Hao's injuries. Unlike Chen Hao, who was like the moon surrounded by stars, Xiao Jihan, who also won, had a gloomy face. Only a few followers were by his side, and all of them were gloomy. "Xiang Hao, are your injuries better?" At this moment Xiao Ding walked in. After seeing Chen Hao, his face shone with joy and undisguised concern as he asked this. Everyone immediately dispersed obediently and went to their seat. "I'm better. Thank you for your concern, Patriarch. That's good. Although you tied with Helian Wuzi today, it was purely a fluke. In future battles, others will be wary of that secret technique of yours. Don't take any more risks." "Yes," Chen Hao replied. While Chen Hao and the others were eating, in the city lord's mansion master Li Ran's room, Li Ran was sitting on both sides of a chessboard with a smile on his face. "It's been 10 years, 1 month, and 8 days since we last met. I didn't expect Brother Xiao to be even more outstanding than before. The secret to longevity is indeed worthy of its reputation." The old man sitting opposite Li Ran was none other than the Xiao family's ancestor, Elder Xiao. "Brother Li, you have a good memory. No matter how strong the secret to longevity is, it can't compare to your spiritual cultivation sutra, he. Tell me, you're holed up in that place, refusing to come even when you're called out. You definitely don't visit without a reason, right? Could it be for that little fellow Xiao Xianghao? You don't have to hide it, I just happened to discover. Mysterious ice chi. He. I think he comprehended it in your elemental spirit cave? This little fellow is more powerful than you think." Li Ran saw Elder Zhao's stunned expression when he mentioned Chen Hao, so he continued with a smile. "Brother Li, how did you discover it? How is it more powerful than I thought?" Elder Xiao asked in surprise. "I'm at least a 7th grade spiritual sage. Is it strange that I discovered it? You don't have to worry, other than me, no one else will discover it. As for why I said he's more powerful than you think, that's because this little fellow's innate psychokinesis is comparable to a spiritual sage." "What? How is that possible?" Elder Xiao was so shocked that he almost jumped up when he heard Li Ran's word. "I also think it's impossible, but that's the truth." Li Ran frowned. Martial artists and spiritual sages, although different paths lead to the same goal, there's still a huge difference. Furthermore, before reaching the martial saint level, they're like fire and water. If this little fellow hadn't started cultivating as a martial artist, it wouldn't be strange. However, he's already at the martial master level. How can his innate psychokinesis still exist? Innate psychokinesis was the spiritual root that Elder Xiao had mentioned to Chen Hao before. Everyone was born with psychokinesis, but there were strong and weak ones. Only when one's psychokinesis reached a certain level could one be called a person with spiritual root. When this kind of person started cultivating as a martial artist, the tempering of their physical body would not be able to erase their psychokinesis. They would only be able to temporarily force it into the depths of their brain, which was also the upper dantian. When they stepped into the martial ancestor level and had perfect control over their yuanli, they would be able to start tempering the most mysterious part of their brain. At that time, the innate psychokinesis hidden in their brain would be of great use. As for martial artists who didn't have spiritual roots, they were people who were born with weaker psychokinesis. Once they started cultivating as a martial artist, their psychokinesis would be too weak and would be erased by the sliver of yuanli that entered their brain. Therefore, it was impossible for this kind of person to temper the most mysterious part of the human body, the brain. However, even though Chen Hao had started cultivating as a martial artist, his innate psychokinesis wasn't forced into the depths of his brain. Instead, it could be displayed with his mind. Elder Xiao wasn't the only one who was shocked. Even Li Ran, who was a spiritual sage, found it unbelievable. How long did he last during the spiritual roots test? Li Ran asked as he stared at Elder Shao. About 4 hours, 4 hours. Li Ran frowned slightly and said, He's not considered very strong. He barely met the requirements to become a spiritual sage. This is really strange. Could it be that when he tempered his physical body, his psychokinesis could also increase on its own? Li Ran and Elder Shao really couldn't figure it out, and it was impossible for them to figure it out. Although Chen Hao's physical body was strong in the past, he was still an ordinary youth. It was only because of his childhood experiences and the obsession in his heart that he possessed a psychokinesis that surpassed ordinary people. However, that kind of psychokinesis was considered an extremely ordinary existence compared to the requirements to become a spiritual sage. However, the current Chen Hao wasn't the simple youth he used to be. He was the fusion of two souls. It was also because of the soul fusion that almost tore the soul apart, as well as the mysterious fusion, that there was today's Chen Hao. This, Elder Shao was speechless. He had to admit that Li Ran's discovery was really too shocking for him. Brother Shao, tell me what you want first. I think it's definitely not a small matter. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to look for me. However, as long as I can help, I will definitely help you. However, I knew you wouldn't lose out. Elder Shao said, however what? Tell me. Haha, give that little fellow to me. Li Ran laughed lightly and immediately demanded an exorbitant price. What? You're dreaming. Li Ran, we've been friends for so many years. Don't tell me you want to extort me? All right, since you've said this, I'll take a step back. We'll nurture this little fellow together. How about that? In name, he's a member of your Shao family. Do as you see fit. If you agree, tell me what you want. I guarantee that I'll do my best to do it. If you don't agree, leave the money for the tea. It's a total of 3 copper coins and you can leave. Li Ran stared at Elder Shao and said unquestionably, Why don't you go rob a bank? You want me to pay 3 copper coins for a mouthful of inferior tea? Elder Shao was so angry that he immediately pointed at Li Ran's nose and said, If this scene was seen by the cultivators in Cloud State City, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall to the ground. One had to know that these two people were like gods in the eyes of the cultivators in Cloud State. Especially Li Ran, he was the undisputed #1 expert. But now, these two respected figures were more like old men haggling in the market. Ready to pay for the tea? Seeing Elder Zhao's appearance, Li Ran smiled slightly and said indifferently as if he didn't care. You win. Elder Shao gloomily sat down again and glared at Li Ran. He finished the tea in his cup in one gulp, and just as he put down the cup, under the control of Li Ran's telekinesis, the teapot in front of him was filled to the brim. 6 copper coins. Chapter 53. It's that serious? When Elder Shao told him that Shao Jihan's family was the Dongfang family, one of the 3 major families in the Jinyuan kingdom, as well as the Dongfang family's attempt to take over the Shao family's elemental spirit cave, Li Ran frowned. Li Ran, you don't have to do this with me, okay? If you can help me settle this, I'll give you half of that kid. He'll be the Shao family's in name, but he can also be your guild of intentions. Do as you see fit. If it wasn't for the fact that I can't deal with this matter, I wouldn't want to see a sanctimonious person like you for the rest of my life. Elder Shao said without leaving any face for him. Cough cough. Li Ran's face turned red. Shao, can you not say such nasty things? This matter is really serious. The Dongfang family. They're just characters abandoned by the Dongfang family. How can the Dongfang family scheme over a mere elemental spirit cave? They can just come and take it. That's true, but they've already climbed up the Dongfang family tree. As long as the Dongfang family comes and wants to take over the elemental spirit cave and cripple Shao Ding and you'll resist, right? Destroy them? After destroying them, they'll pull out an even stronger existence. What will happen in the end? Li Ran asked. Do I need you to tell me that? Otherwise, why would I look for you? Elder Shao said. Seeing that Li Ran was still frowning, he hesitated and said, "Is it really difficult?" Elder Shao knew that Li Ran was not only the city lord of Cloud State City, but also the #1 expert in Cloud State. Most importantly, he had another identity. He was the president of the Guild of Intentions stationed in Cloud State City. Without this identity, Elder Shao would not have come to find Li Ran at all, because Li Ran could not help him. Intentions were existences on the level of pandas in the Jinyuan kingdom. In terms of numbers, they could not be compared to martial artists who had simple entry requirements. However, after reaching a certain level, the various magical powers of intentions were far from what martial artists could compare to. Therefore, in any country, intentions were highly valued. However, the early-stage intentions were too weak compared to martial artists. In the cultivation world where the strong preyed on the weak, they could die at any time. It was precisely because of this that the Guild of Intentions was formed. The Intent Guild was the powerful backing of the Intent Guild. It united the small number of Intent Guild members into one. This force was an extremely powerful existence in the entire Zhen Yuan kingdom. Moreover, it was heavily supported and protected by the kingdom. Let's be clear first, I'm not trying to extort you this time. Li Ran regained his serious expression. Your Shao clan's crisis this time isn't something you and I can resolve. After all, it involves the Dongfang family's family. You have to know that any family is extremely protective of their own and cares about their reputation. But when the intentions is, the face of the Dong family of intentions. For the sake of their reputation, the Dongfang family will definitely take action. This is also the reason why we can't afford to offend the big families. In front of them, the weak have no reason to reason. You're right. Elder Shao frowned deeply and sighed. I've already thought of this and prepared for the worst. Actually, I didn't expect you to help me with this matter. After all, the Guild of Intentions won't go against the Dongfang family for a small family like our Shao family. I'm here to tell you that the Shao family is only the beginning. Cloud State City will probably belong to Dongfang Wankai in the future. Dongfang Wankai was Shao Jihan's father and the head of the Dongfang family, the richest family in Cloud State. Elder Shao was very clear that since he had climbed up the Dongfang family's branch and decided to use the Shao family as an example, it was impossible for him to stop. The second to act would probably be the Helian family who owned the Tianyuan cave. Fortunately, you came to find me, and fortunately, Dongfang Wankai hasn't acted yet. What do you mean? Elder Shao was startled by Li Ran's words, and he instantly asked in surprise. I hope it's not too late. Whether or not we can save the Shao family depends on that little fellow. Li Ran stared at Elder Shao and said, You mean Xiang Hao? That's right. 3 days later, the round-robin matches for the top 5 had finally ended. Helian Yiqing, Shao Jihan, Mo Yui, and Sima Jianyun, as well as the other 5 contestants who were in the top 10, had won all their matches and obtained first place in their group. Only the 7th group, Helian Wuzi and Chen Hao, were still tied for first place after the group matches ended. Both of them won all their matches in the next few matches. Everyone had already expected this when Helian Wuzi and Chen Hao fought to a draw, so it wasn't strange at all. The top 10 had become the top 11. The anticipated battle of the pinnacle had finally arrived. In the entire martial arts arena, there were 3 matches that everyone looked forward to the most. The first match was the battle between Chen Hao and Helian Wuzi. Without a doubt, the 2 of them who had advanced to the top 11 would have a chance to fight again. Ever since that day when she received Chen Hao's humiliation, Helian Wuzi seemed to have changed into a different person. On her absolutely beautiful little face, there was no longer any fluctuation of emotions. No one heard her say half a word again. Her entire person seemed to have turned into a piece of 10,000-year-old ice. Even the people closest to her were infected by that kind of cold indifference that kept people 1,000 miles away and didn't dare to speak to her. One could imagine how big of a blow Chen Hao had dealt her, therefore, one could imagine how crazy Helian Wuzi would be when she met Chen Hao again. The other match that everyone looked forward to the most was still Chen Hao's. That was the battle between Xiao Jihan and Chen Hao. The life and death battle between the two of them was no longer a secret. Everyone knew that as long as they met in the martial arts competition, it would be a life and death battle between the two of them. This was destined to be an exciting and cruel battle. And the third match that everyone looked forward to the most was still related to Chen Hao. It was the battle between Helian Yiqing and Chen Hao. As Helian Wuzi's fiancé, his wife had been molested in front of tens of thousands of people. Any man wouldn't let Chen Hao off, let alone Helian Yiqing, this kind of proud son of God. Buttface, Xiao Xianghao is really your brother. When Chen Hao and the other contestants went up to the stage to draw lots after the referee gave the order, a 12 or 13-year-old youth in the Li family's camp asked an honest-looking youth with a bruised nose and a swollen face beside him. This youth was Buttface. His nickname was due to his mother's sharp cheers during the Li family's test. This made Buttface a celebrity among the Li family's new disciples. Of course it's true. Xiao Xianghao is brother Tianci. He's my best friend, my best brother. Buttface's originally small eyes were only a slit because of his swollen face, but his voice was unquestionable and full of pride. He looked as if he was Chen Hao who had advanced to the top 11. Then why don't you go and look for him? No. How can I let brother Tianci see me like this? I'll embarrass brother Tianci. Aren't you standing up for him and taking a beating? The others were just casually talking about it. Do you have to? That won't do. I'll fight anyone who talks bad about brother Tianci. It's time to draw lots. First update. Please add recommend. Chapter 54. Just as everyone was paying attention to Chen Hao and the others starting to draw lots, a soft laugh suddenly drifted over. The sound was very soft, but what surprised everyone was that this voice clearly entered everyone's ears. I didn't expect a small city like Cloud State to be so lively. The person who laughed said gently, but his words were condescending and domineering. It was as if the entire Cloud State was like an ant in his eyes. Almost instantly, everyone in the martial arts venue frowned. They even stopped drawing lots and looked at the entrance of the martial arts venue. There was no doubt that the person who came was an expert. To be able to suppress the entire martial arts arena so easily, perhaps other than those experts on the rostrum, there were not many people who could do it. He's finally here, Xiao Jihan, who was standing on the main stage, saw a familiar figure. All the worries in his heart were swept away. He, who had been suppressing himself for a long time, showed an unconcealable surprise and arrogance on his face. He's here? Li Ran, who was sitting in the middle of the main stage, thought to himself. His expression did not change as he slowly stood up. He glanced at Dongfang Wangkai, who was following behind the young man in his 20s, and the dozen or so young disciples who were full of energy and arrogance. He cupped his fist and said politely, I'm Li Ran, the Cloud State's city lord. Master of the Dongfang clan, these guests are? City Lord Li, this is Master Dongfang Zan of the Dongfang clan, one of the 3 great clans of the Jinyuan kingdom. He's only 22 years old, and he's at the peak of the 9th grade martial emperor. He's only half a step away from becoming a martial emperor. You can't call us Master of the Dongfang clan in front of Master Dongfang. We're just a small branch of the Dongfang clan in Cloud State. It's not worth mentioning. Dongfang Wangkai did not hide his flattery. His fat face was smiling like a blooming chrysanthemum. He did not forget to flatter Li Ran as he introduced them. What? This. How is this possible? The Dongfang clan. Is it really the Dongfang clan of the 3 great clans of the kingdom? They're indeed powerful. They're already a 9th grade martial emperor at such a young age. No wonder they're so arrogant. So they're from the Dongfang clan. Dongfang Wankai is a branch of the Dongfang clan. This is unbelievable. Dongfang Wansai's words caused an uproar in the arena. Even the influential figures in Yunzhou on the rostrum were shocked. No one would have thought that Dongfang Wankai was actually a branch of the Dongfang family in Cloud State City. No one would have thought that someone from the Dongfang family would come to the small Cloud State City. The expressions of the people who were glaring angrily at the start immediately changed completely. Even Helian Lei and the others were no exception. Who would dare to offend the Dongfang family, one of the top 3 families in the Jinyuan kingdom? Who could afford to offend him? So it's young Master Dongfang from the Dongfang family. We're honored by your presence. Please, let me in. Bring them to the VIP seats. Li Ran hurriedly said politely, but he didn't show much enthusiasm. He just asked the guard to lead him to the VIP seat. Dongfang Zan's eyes flashed with a trace of displeasure. He glanced at Li Ho but did not dare to fly into a rage. Li Ran was the lord of a city after all. Although it was just a small county, Li Ran's intentions could not be hidden from Dongfang Zan's eyes. These are the top 10 of the Yunzhou martial meet? Dongfang Zan and a dozen other people swaggered to the VIP seats not far from the rostrum. Originally, some of the VIPs didn't even need Li Ran's instructions and gave up their seats. After sitting down, Dongfang Zan's gaze slowly swept past Chen Hao and the others who had already started drawing lots. His eyes narrowed slightly and stopped at Helian Wuzi as he asked, "Yes, young master. However, because there are 2 people in a group who are tied, there is now 11th place. Young master, that young lady is known as the number 1 genius beauty in Yunzhou, Helian Wuzi. The one standing at 6th place is my son, Dongfang Han." "Oh? Not bad, not bad." Dongfang Zan didn't even look at Xiao Jihan. His gaze was locked onto Helian Wuzi's graceful figure as he praised in a low voice. Dongfang Wankai, this old fox, naturally understood what Dongfang Zan meant by not bad. He immediately said in a low voice, "As long as young master likes it, in this small Cloud State city, no one dares to offend young master. Leave it to me." Dongfang Zan nodded slightly. He was satisfied with Dongfang Wansai's shrewdness and consideration. "Young master, about my son, don't worry with me here. What else can happen to him?" Yes. That's good, that's good." It had to be said that Dongfang Wankai did have some skills to be able to become the richest man in Yunzhou without any martial arts. He had been working for many years to climb up the Dongfang family's branch. With his powerful financial resources and excellent foresight, he finally opened the gate not long ago and took down Dongfang Zan. That was why he, who was so far away, became a branch of the Dongfang family. To be able to invite Dongfang Zan to Yunzhou, he had sold all the good things in Yunzhou. Xiao Jihan's speed of improvement in half a year, the Xiao family's elemental spirit cave, the Helian family's Tianyuan cave, and of course, the number of beauties in Yunzhou. In Dongfang Wansai's eyes, there was no fortress that couldn't be conquered. Everyone had a weakness, and with a weakness, he could take it down. And now, he had done it. The drawing of lots was completed very quickly. Chen Hao was in the 5th round. The first to go up was the number 1 genius of the Mo family, Mo Yui, and a relatively weaker contestant. "Are you really not worried at all?" Xiao Mei whispered to Chen Hao as she glanced at Xiao Jihan, who had already walked to the VIP seats to greet Dongfang Zan. "Is there any use in worrying?" Chen Hao's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness as he replied. Even Chen Hao didn't expect that Xiao Jihan's family would actually climb up the Dongfang family, one of the 3 great families of the Jinyuan kingdom. What did it mean for them to rush over at this time? This made Chen Hao feel an unprecedented pressure. There was no time when he craved power more than now. He needed power and needed to become stronger. Only then would he not be threatened. Only then would he be able to firmly grasp his own fate in his own hands. At this moment, even Chern Hao felt that his future was bleak. Especially when he saw the faces of those who had succumbed to Dongfang Zan's abuse of power, he deeply understood how powerful the Dongfang family was. This wasn't something that he could contend against at this moment. My fate is in my own hands. The words that he had said to Xiao Mei a few days ago now seemed like a joke. His only hope was actually placed on someone else. This made him, who was born with pride and arrogance, feel extremely humiliated. 3 days ago, Elder Xiao had found him alone and secretly brought him to meet Li Ran. Although the two of them didn't tell him the exact situation, they only told him not to feel any psychological pressure when facing Xiao Jihan. They also told him to perform well in the competition and not to hide anything. However, Chern Hao knew that the severity of the situation had exceeded his expectations. He, or rather, the Xiao family, and even the entire Yunzhou were facing a huge crisis. The spearhead was directed at Xiao Jihan. Chern Hao realized it, but he couldn't understand how Xiao Jihan, or rather, Xiao Jihan's family, could be so powerful. Now that he saw Dongfang Zan's appearance, Chern Hao finally understood. Clap, clap, clap. Not bad at all. On the stage, in the third round, after Helian Wuzi blasted Sima Jianyun out of the stage with one move, Dongfang Zan actually clapped his hands and praised her from the VIP seat. So what if he was praising her? His voice was heard by everyone in the arena. Especially when he looked at Helian Wuzi, his gaze carried a trace of passion that anyone could see. Helian Wuzi, right? Your aptitude is not bad, I like it very much. Come to our Dongfang family. This small Yunzhou is really a waste of your talent. What made everyone even more surprised was that Dongfang Zan actually threw out such a huge olive branch. What kind of concept was entering the Dongfang family? Although many people could see that Dongfang Zan obviously didn't have good intentions, many people thought that if they were in his shoes, they would definitely agree immediately. Even some female disciples were no exception. They couldn't wait to replace Helian Wuzi and agree immediately. They were even more jealous of Helian Wuzi's looks. However, most of the gazes that looked at Dongfang Zan were filled with disdain and anger, but they didn't dare to say anything. Blatant trash. Chen Hao coldly scolded in a low voice. Xiao Mei also frowned slightly. The gaze that she looked at Dongfang Zan with was obviously filled with fear, but the disdain was even stronger. As for the Helian family's head, Helian Lei, he frowned slightly. This guy who had always been arrogant actually swallowed his anger. Similarly, although Helian Yiqing's fiancé was so angry that veins were popping out of his face and his entire body was trembling, he was like a tortoise withdrawing its head and enduring. It's really a fucking ninja turtle. The more Chen Hao looked, the angrier he got. He couldn't help but curse. Luckily, his voice wasn't loud. Just when everyone was staring at Helian Wuzi, wanting to see what Helian Wuzi would say, they didn't expect that Helian Wuzi's ice-cold and emotionless face actually didn't change in the slightest. Her footsteps didn't even slow down in the slightest. She walked down the stage just like that, as if she didn't hear Dongfang Zan's words at all, completely treating them as farts. However, wherever Helian Wuzi passed, it was as if it had instantly entered winter. The dense icy aura caused the air around her to distort. Her long hair danced without wind. Everyone could see that it wasn't that Helian Wuzi didn't hear it, but that she chose to blatantly ignore it. Dongfang Zan frowned slightly, but the heat in his eyes became even stronger. Young master, you probably don't know, but Helian Wuzi is the fiancée of the Helian family's young master. She probably can't help it. Moreover, it's said that she was provoked by Xiao Xianghao 2 days ago in the competition and became a bit abnormal. Dongfang Wangkai didn't miss the opportunity to say. The words that he said not only stabbed the Helian family, but also stabbed Chen Hao. Haha. This is even more interesting. I like it. Dongfang Zan narrowed his eyes and was already staring at Helian Wuzi. His gaze became even more heated as he spoke. Even he didn't think that the small Yunzhou would actually have such a stunning beauty. He felt that he was really too lucky to come here this time. Under the excitement, he actually didn't hide his lustful heart anymore. This caused the majority of the people in the martial arts arena, especially Helian Wuzi's supporters, to rage in their hearts. Humph! At this moment Li Ran, who was originally amiable, suddenly let out a cold snort. A majestic spiritual energy instantly enveloped the area. His eyes looked towards Dongfang Zan and said, "Young Master Dongfang, we Yunzhou people respect you as a disciple of the Dongfang family, but we don't welcome scum like you. I believe that if your Dongfang family knows that you've tarnished the family's reputation, they won't let you off. Get out." Immediately, Hua, the usually amiable Li Ran, suddenly faced Dongfang Zan directly and said such refreshing words. Instantly, the entire martial arts arena exploded into an uproar. "What did you say?" Dongfang Zan also didn't think that there would be someone in the small Yunzhou who dared to challenge him. Even if he was dead, even Li Ran would turn a blind eye to him. Hence, after hearing Li Ran's words, this arrogant fellow instantly stood up like a mad dog whose tail had been stepped on. He pointed at Li Ran and roared sharply. "Second update. Please help me collect this. If you don't have a collection, please recommend it, thank you." Chapter 55. I said, "I don't welcome scum like you who tarnishes the Dongfang family's reputation. Get out." Li Ran said coldly. Under his rage, the pressure of his mental energy made everyone feel as if they couldn't breathe. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down on their hearts. Ha ha ha! Dongfang Zan was so angry that he started laughing. His eyes stared fiercely at Li Ran and said, "You, a little city lord, actually dare to tell this young master to get out? You actually dare to say that this young master is the scum of the Dongfang family? Ha ha! You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even if I, Dongfang Zan, am the scum of the Dongfang family, it should be said by the people of the Dongfang family. Who do you think you are? Isn't she just a little beauty? This young master has taken a liking to her. It's fine if you don't give her to me, but you actually dare to stop me? Ha ha! Old man, aren't you just a little emperor of will? You don't even put our Dongfang family in your eyes. You really have monstrous guts. Get out." Li Ran was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. His tyrannical mental energy suddenly burst out from his body. He coldly stared at Dongfang Zan and said again, "Without a doubt, if it wasn't for Dongfang Zan's identity, Li Ran would have definitely smashed his face into pieces with a punch." "What? You want to fight? Come, hit me. Ha ha. Come, hit me. This young master wants to see what you dare to do to me. Ha ha, come, hit me here, I'm so scared." Dongfang Zan was a 9th-rank martial king. In the Cloud State City, he could definitely be considered an expert on the same level as Xiao Ding and the other family head. However, in front of Li Ran, this divine will, he was nothing. But in front of the enraged Li Ran, he didn't hold back at all. As he spoke, he even stood up and stretched his face closer to Li Ran, displaying the shamelessness of a hedonistic disciple to the extreme. "Ha ha! City Lordly, you're in the wrong here. People shouldn't get muddle-headed as they get older and shouldn't let their emotions affect their decisions. Young Master is a magnanimous person. As long as the people of Yunzhou perform well, he won't be calculative. It's a great blessing for Helian Wuzi to enter the Dongfang clan. Also, the Yuan Spirit Cave of the Xiao clan and the Tian Yuan Cave of the Helian clan. Young Master is also interested in the Xiao clan's Yuan Spirit Cave and the Xiao clan's Tian Yuan Cave. Oh right, the disciple of the Xiao clan called Xiao Xianghao, kill him too." Dongfang Wankai saw that Li Ran was so angry that his face was twitching, but he didn't dare to touch Dongfang Zan. He sighed in his heart. It was awesome to have a backer. Dongfang Zan was only a 9th-grade martial king, but the #1 expert of Yunzhou City, The Emperor of Intentions, Li Ran, could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. Li Ran's expression became more and more unsightly. Originally, he had already discussed with old Shao about how to deal with this. As long as he endured for a few days and waited for the big shots of the Intentions Guild to arrive, everything would be easily settled as long as they took a fancy to Chen Hao. However, the news had already spread for 4 days, and the big shots of the Intentions Guild still hadn't arrived. Instead, Dongfang Zan arrived first. It was fine if he arrived first, it was fine if he was arrogant, it was fine if he could tolerate it. However, in front of all the cultivators of Yunzhou, he actually dared to flirt with Helian Wuzi without any taboo. He completely treated the people of Yunzhou as air. How could Li Ran, the city lord, put his face? How could he tolerate it? However, looking at Dongfang Zan's arrogant face, Li Ran couldn't back down. The instigator, Dongfang Wankai, made Li Ran want to cut him into pieces. However, could Li Ran do it? Fight? Li Ran knew that once he made a move, the Intentions Guild would have to pay a much higher price to help him. Although the Intentions Guild was rare, and Chen Hao's strange talent of combining intent and martial arts was unheard of, what if the Intentions Guild didn't care about this talent? The consequences would be unimaginable. Do you want me to die? Just when Li Ran was filled with righteous indignation and didn't know what to do, a cold voice suddenly sounded from the edge of the main stage. The voice wasn't loud, but it was clearly heard by the people who had gathered their Dantian's origin energy. Xianghao. Xiao Mei was so frightened that she immediately grabbed Chen Hao's wrist. Chen Hao held Xiao Mei's wrist tightly. His handsome face was filled with arrogance and coldness. Boom! Before Xiao Mei could stop him, Chen Hao suddenly stepped on the ground and shot up into the sky. He charged towards Dongfang Zan and Dongfang Wankai at an unbelievable speed. Chen Hao's sudden action was out of everyone's expectations. However, he didn't give them time to be shocked. His speed was too fast, so fast that most of them couldn't even see Chen Hao's figure clearly. Even Chen Hao himself didn't know why. When Dongfang Wankai said all the conditions to threaten Li Ran, he couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. He felt as though he was about to be burned. A strong desire exploded in the core of his mind. At that moment, he felt as though he was about to explode. His body was suddenly filled with boundless energy. The entire world seemed to have frozen and time seemed to have stopped. Kill, 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 kill. Dongfang Wankai's despicable and shameless face had completely ignited the killing intent in Chen Hao's heart. It was even more intense than Dongfang Zan's. At least Dongfang Zan was still a member of the Dongfang family. He had the right to be arrogant. However, Dongfang Wankai's disgusting face that wanted to stir up trouble with his rotten mouth and despicable methods, especially when he said that he would kill him, made Chen Hao burn with anger. Boom! Maybe it was because Chen Hao's actions were too unexpected, or maybe it was because they were shocked by Chen Hao's arrogant aura, or maybe it was because Chen Hao's speed was too fast. In any case, even Li Ran, the mental saint, didn't have time to react. A red and white sticky substance appeared in front of everyone's eyes, accompanied by a dull explosion. The 9th grade martial king Dongfang Zan was shocked by Chen Hao's aura. His face was covered in blood and brain matter, and he quickly retreated. A fat and headless body was like a kite with a broken string. It drew a beautiful arc and landed on the ground with a bang. Screams and screams suddenly erupted at this moment. Some of the younger female disciples even covered their mouths in fright. Helian Wuzi's emotionless eyes actually shone with a strange splendor at this moment. She stared blankly at the youth who humiliated her. Father! Xiao Jihan, who was extremely proud of himself, suddenly screamed in anger and grief. He charged towards the headless body. You're courting death. Dongfang Zan, whose face was pale, finally regained his senses. With a loud shout, he attacked Chen Hao with violent origin power. Dongfang Zan was really frightened. A dignified ninth-grade martial king was actually frightened by a mere martial master like Chen Hao. He was so frightened that he only thought of dodging and didn't have any consciousness to save Dongfang Wankai, who was right beside him. "Stop!" Li Ran, who had also just regained his senses, suddenly shouted and grabbed at the void. Suddenly, a sharp crystal light condensed out of thin air, and with a buzzing sound, it blasted towards Dongfang Zan as fast as lightning. Boom! How could Dongfang Zan, who was only a ninth-grade martial king, block the anxious attack of the #1 expert in Yunzhou, who was also a seventh-grade martial emperor? Although they were far apart, Li Ran still sent Dongfang Zan flying with one move. "Brat, are you crazy?" After sending out that attack, Li Ran's body was like lightning. Boundless mental energy covered Chen Hao and pulled back Chen Hao, who seemed to have gone crazy. However, even Li Ran's heart trembled when he saw the fury in Chen Hao's eyes. How could the aura of a fourth-grade martial master reach such a frightening level? Aura was one of the most proficient methods of intent. Boundless mental energy pressure was the best way to intimidate the opponent. However, Li Ran could clearly feel that the arrogant aura that Chen Hao had just emitted was not mental energy. Instead, it was an aura that came from his bones and soul. An aura that didn't contain any energy, a pure aura. Good, good, good. Ha ha. Just at this moment, a loud and clear voice of an old man suddenly resounded in the sky. An earth-shattering pressure rolled in, causing the entire martial arts arena to be in an uproar. Immediately, everyone looked towards the sky in fear. Even the furious Dongfang Zan, Chen Hao, who seemed to have lost his mind, and Xiao Jihan, who was similarly driven mad by the sudden change of events, all looked towards the sky without exception. A figure emitting boundless majesty appeared. He had white hair and a white beard, and he had the demeanor of an immortal. His eyes were shining with a bright light that made people not dare to look at him directly. Just his eyes were enough to make the sun lose its splendor. Behind this figure, several young male and female disciples were also flying in the sky. Their gazes were all locked onto Chen Hao without exception. Pre-PRA President? The instant Li Ran saw the old man, his voice trembled and he stuttered as he called out. Immediately after, he knelt on the ground and said with incomparable excitement, "Subordinate Li Ran of Yunzhou pays his respects to the president." When Dongfang Zan saw the person who had come, his face instantly turned extremely ugly. He tightly clenched his fists, but he didn't dare to do anything else. "Stand up." An invisible force gently lifted Li Ran up. The old man looked at Chen Hao and said, "Little fellow, you are the disciple of the Xiao family, Xiao Xianghao, right?" First update. This chapter has been written and deleted, and it took me a long time to finish it. Without a draft, it's really hard to set the update time to a small range. Thanks to yesterday's Chuan Liang Wu Zi, passionate love emotiei mu xiei. Tragedy? Wind blows the rain comes, tadpoles in the sea, plants vs. zombies, maple farewell night, and purple moon orchid. Also, Student Wu Chun 369, you are also an old reader who supports Dark Mountain. You should know what a new book needs. The review you posted, if it was an ordinary person, would definitely have been banned and deleted because it would affect the students who have not started reading it yet. Therefore, I only blocked the post from you. Is there a need to spend money to review Black Raven Mountain? This book is not the kind of novel that will explode with excitement right from the start. It's fine if you don't like it, but as an old reader, is there really a need for you to directly change the rating from 10 to 9? It's not easy for every author. Dark Mountain, who writes at a tortoise's speed, is even more difficult. I sincerely hope that if you like it, you can stay and support it. If you don't like it, you can quietly leave. This is also a form of support for the author. A book cannot possibly suit everyone's taste. I hope that you can understand more. Also, there are often female genes in the book review section. How can there be a man? How can the deepest sea on Earth be 50,000 meters deep? I only want to say that this book is a fantasy. Li Yuan's time on Earth is also the future. Genes are just a general concept. If you can't do it now, does it mean you can't do it in the future? The word clone is indeed wrong. Dark Mountain has already changed it. As for the deep sea trench, please don't use the depth of the trench found now to measure the future. What is the radius of Earth? 6,000 kilometers, which is about 6 million meters. There are still countless areas in the ocean that have not been explored. 50,000 meters? I hope that in the future, such book reviews will not appear again. Otherwise, I will delete the ban. If it affects other people's reading, it will also affect our result. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 56. Yes, Senior. Chen Hao's expression was solemn, and his eyes shone with a trace of shock and fervor. He quickly withdrew his arrogant aura and cupped his fists respectfully. Very good, very good. The old man's eyes shone with a breathtaking light as he glanced at Chen Hao. He stroked his long beard and nodded repeatedly. At this moment, all eyes in the entire martial arts arena were focused on the old man, Chen Hao, and the few young disciples who came with the old man. Although most people only knew that the old man's identity was definitely unimaginably powerful from Li Ran's excited and respectful kneeling, they didn't know how powerful he was. Especially the disciples of the Shao family who didn't even know who the old man was. But there was no doubt that the aura of the old man and his few young disciples intimidated everyone with just their appearance. They didn't know how high the old man's cultivation was, but those few young disciples looked to be at most 20 years old, yet they were able to fly in the air. Just this point alone made the various patriarchs and elders of the various large clans on the rostrum blush with shame, and the most excited person was Li Ran. Especially when he saw the old man look at Chen Hao approvingly and say, "Very good, very good." He was so excited that he was about to float. This was the president of the Jinyuan Kingdom's Guild of Intentions. What was the level of his cultivation? Peak martial sage or martial god? Li Ran didn't know. The only thing he knew was that there were no more than one person in the Jinyuan Kingdom who could match the president. In any case, Li Ran didn't expect the president to come personally. A few days ago, he just quickly reported Chen Hao's situation to the headquarters of the Guild of Intentions. As long as the headquarters sent a slightly more powerful person and took a fancy to Chen Hao, this crisis would be resolved. But he didn't expect that the important person would be so powerful that he directly reached the top. At this moment, the old man stared at Chen Hao with a smile on his face and said gently, "Little guy, are you willing to join the Guild of Intentions?" Chen Hao already had some understanding of this, and judging from Li Ran's expression, this old man should be the president of the Guild of Intentions. Facing this olive branch that was enough to make people faint, Chen Hao should immediately agree. However, his clear eyes flashed with a hint of confusion, as if he was muttering to himself. He looked at Xiao Ding, whose face was filled with excitement and whose body was trembling slightly. Chen Hao's behavior made Li Ran have the urge to ask for more money. What was this brat doing? "You are the head of the Shao clan?" Fortunately, the old man did not seem to mind. Instead, he smiled and followed Chen Hao's gaze to Xiao Ding. "Yes, Senior. Xiao Xianghao's original name is Chen Hao. To be able to obtain Senior's favor is a blessing that he and our Shao clan have accumulated over several lifetimes. It's an extreme honor, an extreme honor. Chen Hao, why aren't you thanking Senior?" Xiao Ding's face was filled with excitement, as if he was afraid that a pie would fall from the sky and fly away. He stared at Chen Hao and shouted. Xiao Ding's words were very clear. He even directly restored Chen Hao's original name without any ambiguity. Disciple Xiao Xianghao, Chen Hao greets Senior. Chen Hao respectfully bowed and performed the common entrance ceremony in the cultivation world. However, Chen Hao's words were very thought-provoking. The ignorant young man naturally did not understand why Chern Hao said two names. However, Li Ran, Xiao Ding, and the other old fellows felt very comforted by Chern Hao's actions. The smile on the old man's face became even wider. No power, clan, or sect had no desire for the cultivation of their disciples. Ungrateful ingrates were the most disliked. And Chern Hao had such a performance at such a young age. It could no longer be described as simply repaying kindness. After the old man calmly accepted Chern Hao's kowtow, he stretched out his hand and held him up, saying, "Very good, very good. Actually, you only need to agree to join the Intent Guild. We are an organization, not a disciple. But, since you and the old man have done the apprenticeship ceremony, then the old man will make an exception and accept you as a disciple." Ha ha! The old man's words caused the eyeballs of Li Ran and the young disciples behind the old man to almost fall to the ground. They all widened their eyes and looked at Chern Hao, who seemed to be a little depressed with envy and jealousy. Dongfang Zhan, who did not utter a word and even shrunk back a little, as though he was afraid of being seen by the old man, gasped in shock. He secretly cursed the 18 generations of ancestors of Dongfang Wankai, who had already turned into a corpse. He was 2F** king unlucky. Even stepping on dog *T was better than this. It was not easy to persuade that old fellow Dongfang Wankai. He was still thinking about the countless beauties and coming out to have fun, but he did not expect to meet the president of the Intent Guild in this remote corner of the mountain that even the Dongfang family did not dare to provoke. "You are from the Dongfang family?" Just when Dongfang Zhan and his subordinates were about to sneak away, the old man suddenly looked at them, squinted his eyes, and said calmly. Dongfang Zhan and his subordinates instantly felt a chill down their spine, and they had no choice but to stop. "What's your name?" "Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, these 4 meridians. Which one do you belong to? What are you doing here?" I. Dongfang Zhan did not dare to raise his head under the old man's questioning, stammering as he said, "President Fang Jr. President, young Master Dongfang Zhan heard that our Cloud State martial competition was going on and happened to pass by, so he came to take a look, right, to take a look," Dongfang Zhan hurriedly said, looking at Li Ran with a grateful gaze. He was very clear that if this President Fang Yuan told his ugly deeds to the clan leader, he would suffer a lot, but his future in Dongfang family would be affected. Although he did not have any future, Li Ran was someone who repaid evil with kindness. Even though he was a hedonistic young master, he did not have any thoughts of revenge, instead he was very grateful. All of his hatred was given to that damned pig-head. If not for that pig-head's enticement, he would not have come here. If he did not come here, he would not have met Fang Yuan when he was committing crimes. The old man, who was the president of the Intent Guild, Fang Yuan, looked at Li Ran, and after pondering for a while, he said, "In that case, why are you running? Is this old man very scary?" Li Ran, continue the competition. "Since this old man is here, let's see if your Cloud State has any talents that can be nurtured." "Yes," Li Ran immediately replied excitedly, waving his hand to signal the referee to continue the competition. "President Fang, brotherly, I have some urgent matters. I will not disturb you. Goodbye." Dongfang Zhan was not in the mood to watch the competition, and left with his tail between his legs. Before leaving, his gaze subtly looked at Haolian Wuzi, and he shook his head. He knew that he could not cause any more trouble in Cloud State. This little beauty who made his heart flutter could only be thrown to the back of his mind, afraid of his revenge? After Dongfang Zhan and the rest left, Fang Yuan looked at Li Ran and asked, "President, this villain is hard to deal with you around. He naturally would not dare to be impudent. But, if I do this, he probably won't come to Cloud State to cause trouble again." Li Ran lowered his head and said, "No wonder you have stagnated at rank 7 Intent Emperor. There is no problem in enduring appropriately, but the necessary drive is a must. This little guy can kill anyone who tries to sow discord in front of a rank 9 martial emperor. This spirit, you don't have it, is it dangerous? But he did it. What did he ask for? His thoughts were clear. He is clearly someone you hate, but you still want to help him. How can you be clear? Especially when you are the intent emperor. The old man said slowly, his voice was soft and calm. However, these few short sentences caused Li Ran to break out in cold sweat. Every word attacked Li Ran's nerves. The barrier that had been locked up for so many years seemed to have been lit at this moment, causing every cell in Li Ran's body to tremble. Thank you for your reminder, President. You don't need to blame yourself. As the city lord, you are doing this in consideration of Cloud State. Fang Yuan looked at Li Ran's expression and nodded, slightly gratified. Fourth match, Xiao Jihan against Helian Yiqing. When the referee announced the list of contestants, Helian Yiqing immediately jumped onto the stage. Everyone's gazes also landed on Xiao Jihan. Xiao Jihan was seen kneeling beside the headless corpse with a horrifying expression on his face. He was holding his severed neck as if he was playing with it. It was as if he couldn't hear anyone as he muttered to himself in a mournful voice, "Father, didn't you say you wanted me to dominate Cloud State? Xiao clan is ours, Helian clan is ours. We are not only the richest clan, we are also the #1 martial arts clan. We don't need to curry favor with them anymore. Father, I did well, really well. I became Xiao clan's #1 genius, and for 3 years, I was constantly trying to curry favor with Xiao Ding's precious daughter. I did really well. Xiao Bo, that old lecher, was completely bought over by us. As long as there is a genius disciple who is even a little bit of a threat, I can play with him until he is crippled. Ha ha ha. Why? Why? Everything was in my hands. Why is it over? Father, you are really trash. Why did you teach me to play tricks? With my talent, I went from rank 7 martial artist to rank 8 martial master in half a year. What can't I do? But now it's all over. Unknowingly, Xiao Jian had already arrived beside Xiao Jihan. Her face was pale and covered in tears, but she stared at Xiao Jihan in a daze. At this moment, when Xiao Jihan said it himself, she finally understood that what her father, Old Man Xiao, Chun Hao, and the others had said was true. She did not hate Xiao Jihan, she only hated herself for being too naive. Boom! A resplendent scarlet light flashed, and Xiao Jihan's hand suddenly turned scarlet red. Chi-chi! What made everyone dumbfounded was that Xiao Jihan actually seemed to have gone mad as he used his hand, which was filled with essence force, to repeatedly stab his father's fat corpse. After stabbing it a few times, pooh! Screams rang out one after another. Even Chun Hao could not help but narrow his eyes. No one expected Xiao Jihan to stab his own throat and end his life with his own hand. P.S. Please add this to your collection and recommend. Thank you. Chapter 57. He deserved it, he deserved it. I really couldn't tell how ambitious he was. It's too easy for someone like him to die just like that. Yeah, he's really sinister. Luckily, he was discovered. Didn't you see his father's face? Damn it, Xiao Xianghao, oh no, Chun Hao, it's too good to kill him. Yeah, it's too satisfying. However, if this big shot doesn't appear, I'm afraid our Cloud State will really be in a mess because of this father and son. Seeing that Xiao Jihan actually chose to commit suicide, many people felt that it was too easy for him to die. Especially when they thought of Dongfang Wansai's face just now and Xiao Jihan's words just now, they felt that it was not enough to vent their anger. Isn't the Xiao Bo he's talking about the elder on the rostrum? With the death of an important person, it naturally shifted to a secondary role. Many people, especially the Xiao clan disciples, looked at the sixth elder with disdain and indignation. However, to everyone's surprise, the sixth elder, Xiao Bo, actually closed his eyes and remained motionless. Black blood was still flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Xiao Ding had actually seen it long ago. Although he hated Xiao Bo for being blinded by greed and would definitely execute him according to the clan rules, he still felt sad in his heart. Xiao Jihan's talent was outstanding, and he had always been the focus of the Xiao clan's nurturing. Xiao Bo was a direct descendant of the Xiao clan and was Xiao Ding's uncle. Both of them chose to commit suicide. To Xiao Ding, this kind of ending was probably the most relaxing for him. Carry them out and bury them. I hope all the disciples present will take this as a warning. Cultivators should have the spirit of a cultivator. Blinded by greed and playing tricks is ultimately playing with fire and digging one's own grave. Li Ran waved his hand at the guards of the city lord's mansion and said in a deep voice, "The competition continues. Today, the president of our Zhen Yuan Kingdom's Entrepreneur Guild is here personally. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the cultivators of Cloud State. The president is not only the president of the Entrepreneur Guild, but he also has another more important identity. Therefore, it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or not. The ranking is no longer important in this battle of the top 10. What's important is to display your true strength and talent. There's no rest today, let's do it in one go. Participants, do your best. I hope that all of you can catch the Guildmaster's eye. That will be our Cloud Province's fortune." Li Ran continued to speak loudly. Li Ran's words immediately ignited the flames of war between Mo Yui, Helian Iching, and the other top 10 disciples. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, an opportunity for the carp to leap over the dragon gate. Chen Hao had already taken the lead, but what about them? Everyone knew that this would be a battle that would change their lives. The ranking wasn't important. What was important was to display one's strength. As long as one could truly display one's strength and talent in a battle, it would be enough even if one couldn't continue fighting due to serious injuries. Chen Hao did not understand why President Fang Yuan valued him so much and directly took him in as a personal disciple, but he knew that to be truly valued, it would depend on his future performance. Without a doubt, the next match would be his first performance. Therefore, even Chen Hao could not let his guard down. When it came to the 5th round, Chen Hao and another peak 6th-grade martial arts master jumped into the main arena at the same time. Following the referee's command, the two of them immediately started fighting. "Go, throw it outside the city and feed it to the dogs, yes?" A few guards carried the corpses of Xiao Bo, Xiao Jihan, and the headless Dong Fang Wankai out of the arena and directly threw them to the lackeys. The lackeys directly stuffed them into the carriages without even looking at them and sped out of the city. When they reached the barren land, they directly threw them into the gully where the corpses were often disposed of and quickly left. They simply did not notice that although Xiao Jihan's corpse was stiff, its temperature was completely different from Xiao Bo and Dong Fang Wankai. In the winter, there was still a faint residual warmth, rumble, as the 3 corpses rolled down the ravine. The dead Xiao Bo and Dongfang Wankai didn't react at all. However, the stiff Xiao Jihan's hand, which seemed to have pierced into his neck, actually let go of his neck after rolling for a few meters. If anyone saw this, they would definitely widen their eyes in shock. Because this was a hand that had lost all of its fingers except for its thumb. What was even more shocking was that Xiao Jihan's movements were light. With a slight smile, he controlled his rolling body to avoid hitting his head time and time again. When the lackeys who threw the corpses were far away, Xiao Jihan's corpse suddenly glowed with a slight wave of elemental energy. His rolling momentum suddenly slowed down and he stopped beside a slightly protruding rock. Xiao Jihan, whose face, neck, and body were covered in blood, actually slowly opened his eyes. Monstrous hatred and anger shone in his eyes, as well as a trace of excitement from surviving a disaster. Suicide? Chen Hao, who destroyed everything he had and killed his father, was still alive. How could he, Xiao Jihan, commit suicide before he took his revenge? However, Xiao Jihan knew that if he had not taken the risk and used such a crazy method to deceive everyone, he would have definitely died. he did not hesitate to expose his father's and sixth elder's crimes. He did not hesitate to use his dead father's corpse to vent his anger. It was all to cover up. When he had used his fingers to gather origin power and inserted it into his father's corpse, it had felt as uncomfortable as piercing his heart. However, he had still done it. Only by doing this would he be able to make everyone think that he had gone crazy, and inhumane. Only by doing this would he be able to break his own 4 fingers inside his father's corpse. Only by doing this would he be able to deceive everyone's eyes and make everyone think that he had really inserted his hand into his own neck. He forcefully entered the tortoise breathing mode, stopped his heartbeat and breathing, and entered a state of suspended animation. Everything, it was all for the sake of survival. For the sake of revenge. One day Dongfang Han will return. Just you wait. No matter how strong you are, no matter who you are, anyone who dares to stop me will die. All of you will die. Xiao Xianghao, no Chern Hao, just you wait, just you wait. Xiao Jihan's blood-stained face became extremely sinister. He bit his lips so hard that blood flowed out as he spoke sharply through the gaps of his teeth. His 4 fingers that had been cut off started to bleed again because he had used too much strength. However, he seemed to have lost all sense of pain. With a flash of his body, he dashed towards the direction of the desolate mountain range at lightning speed. Home? He no longer had a home. In less than 3 days, the Dongfang family would no longer exist in Yunzhou. Furthermore, even if there was, he could not return. He had to escape. He had to escape from the Jinyuan kingdom and escape to a more powerful kingdom. He knew that if he wanted to take revenge and avenge his humiliation, he had to escape from the Jinyuan kingdom. That old man was too strong, and Chern Hao had already acknowledged him as his master. Special note: Xiao Jihan was able to hide his death from the president and other experts. The details will be explained later. Chern Hao was overflowing with battle intent. His first opponent, a peak grade 6 martial master, was not his match at all. However, in the next few battles, Chern Hao felt extremely stifled. It was not because his opponents were too strong, but because his opponents did not give him a chance to fight to his heart's content and had already admitted defeat. What the F***ck was this? Especially when Helian Iching, who hated him to the bone, was still polite when he fought with him. On the contrary, other than him, the other people's battles were all intense. Climax after climax, one after another, each exciting battle overshadowed the previous one. They were truly going all out without holding anything back. After 4 consecutive battles, Chern Hao's high battle intent was immediately extinguished. Up until now, everyone had fought a total of 20 battles. Everyone had gone up 4 times. Almost everyone had performed as well as they should. Furthermore, other than Helian Iching, Mo Yui, Helian Wuzi and Chern Hao, everyone else, including Sima Jianyun, had already suffered heavy injuries and lost their battle strength. There was no need to mention Chern Hao, but Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui made Chairman Fang Yuan nod slightly. Helian Iching, whose performance was not inferior to the other 2, and even surpassed Mo Yui, did not attract any attention from Fang Yuan for some reason. Just as the remaining 4 people were about to draw lots, Li Ran suddenly froze. Then, he respectfully nodded slightly and stood up, saying, "Wait, the last 4 people don't need to draw lots. Chern Hao and Helian Iching have already fought. Mo Yui, the first round will be between you and Chern Hao." "Yes." Mo Yui, who was holding a large heavy sword, replied at the same time as Chern Hao with a cold expression. At this time, Mo Clan's clan head repeatedly signaled Mo Yui with his eyes. He was clear of Mo Yui's character. In his eyes, other than cultivation, there was only cultivation. His EQ was extremely low, and a broken sword was more important than anything else. Even when eating or sleeping, it did not leave his side. He was even closer to his wife. Of course, he did not have a wife. From the looks of it, He did not intend to have a wife in this life. Since the start of Cloud State's martial gathering, everyone had concealed their strength. Basically, before the battle of the top 10, no one had used a weapon. But this brat, no matter who his opponent was, how high their cultivation was, even if it was someone he could easily deal with a wave of his hand, he would still brandish his sword at them without exception. And now, Chun Hao was chairman's disciple. Who would dare to make a move against him? Mo Clan's clan head could already tell that the chairman seemed to have a little bit of interest in Mo Yui. If Mo Yui did not know how to restrain himself, this little bit of interest would probably be erased. But, what made Mo Clan's clan head hurt was that Mo Yui did not even look at him. His hand was tightly gripping the large sword that he was closer to than his wife. His eyes were only staring at Chun Hao, who was about to fight. His figure was as straight as a sword, and the battle intent on his body soared without restraint. The aura of his entire person was like a sharp treasured sword, and actually contained a trace of sword intent. Mo Yui's fierce aura made Chun Hao, who was originally dispirited due to boredom, suddenly become energetic and hard. Many thanks. Chun Hao's eyes suddenly shone with a bright light. He actually stared at Mo Yui and said two words that made everyone confused. Mo Yui frowned slightly. He did not understand what Chun Hao meant. Since he could not figure it out, he let it go. He did not need to understand. Before the battle, there was only battle in his heart. Only battle. No matter if the enemy was strong or weak, he would fight with all his strength. Furthermore, although Chun Hao's realm was low, his true strength was definitely not inferior to him. Hiss! Following the referee's order, Mo Yui's figure instantly flashed. Under the activation of violent Yuan Qi, he flew towards Chun Hao like a sharp sword that was thrown out of his hand. P.S. Thank you for yesterday's Chin Yu Chuan Liang Wu Zi, passionate love carrot, Xiao Feng sent drizzle, Mo Yui, Supervision Section 1, A Dream of Old Scenery, 1456446546456, People in the Spring Breeze and Drizzle, 9 friends for their support. Thank you for your evaluation votes. The evaluation votes cannot be seen in the Dark Mountain Authors platform, so it will not be listed in the list. Thank you everyone. Please recommend it, add it. Thank you. Chapter 58. Mo Yui's clothes fluttered in the wind. His gaze was cold and a sharp sword intent instantly enveloped Chun Hao. It had to be said that Mo Yui's merciless attack instantly raised everyone's spirit. This was really an anomaly. Just now when the others were fighting with Chun Hao, especially Helian Iching who was anticipating the most, they were all like soft eggs, not daring to act rashly. Although everyone understood what was going on, it seemed like they were really having a headache, but now, Mo Yui's view had finally changed. Come! Chun Hao lightly shouted. With a clang, he unsheathed his sword. This was also the first time he used a weapon. It was also a sword. After coming out of the Yuan Ling cave, he had chosen a sword from the Xiao family's weapon pavilion. But ever since the start of the Cloud State martial gathering, he had never used it. Ding ding ding, in the blink of an eye, crisp sword sounds rang out densely like beans being fried. Resplendent sword rays flashed at the same time and spread out. The disciples with low cultivation couldn't even see the two figures. In their eyes there was only a cold scarlet-red sword ray and a fiery red sword ray. Mo Yui's scarlet-red sword ray carried an intimidating power and sharpness. Just like the Mo family's fist technique, fast, ruthless and strange. On the other hand, Chun Hao's fiery red sword radiance gave others a feeling of being unrestrained, heavy and majestic. Every move was simple, direct, and without any fanciness, just like his martial arts that turned something rotten into something miraculous. After a short moment, it caused the eyes of all the experts to brighten. Mo Yui had never felt so stifled when facing experts of the same level, or even experts of a higher level than him. Every time he attacked, Chern Hao's simple and swift sword ray would attack his weak point. This kind of weak point was something he didn't even feel was a weak point before. But now it made his hands and feet tied. But Chern Hao's simple, direct, sharp, and every move was aimed at the vitals of the enemy. The more Moe watched, the more shocked he became, and the more excited he became. The sword was his favorite. No one knew to what extent his passion for the sword had reached, but he knew that the peak of the way of the sword was his lifelong pursuit. All along, he had felt that the Mo family's sword technique seemed to be lacking something, but he was unable to understand it. But now, Chern Hao's simple but sharp sword ray made him see the light of hope. After Moe and Chern Hao had separated for some distance, Moe suddenly let out a long howl. His body suddenly straightened, and his aura seemed to have changed at this moment. It was as if a sword that had not been sharpened had suddenly been sharpened, becoming even sharper and sharper. The sword in his hand burst out a bright sword light, and he stabbed out with it. This sword was condensed all his strength. There was no defense. There were only attacks. Violent, sharp, and indomitable attacks. Right at this moment, Chern Hao shouted loudly as well, and he drew his sword. Under the activation of the violent Yuan power, the sword in Chern Hao's hand actually let out a buzzing sound. Seeing this scene, everyone knew that this would be the two people's last attack. Victory or defeat would be decided in this one move. Boom! The sword rays clashed and a huge explosion sounded. Moe, along with his sword, staggered backwards. On the hard rock, clear footprints were left. Finally, he stabilized his body. But what made everyone surprised was that Chern Hao was sent flying by the huge force. His speed was several times faster than Moe's. In the eyes of the crowd, the difference in strength was obvious. Just when everyone thought that Chern Hao would be sent flying out of the stage, Chern Hao's feet suddenly emitted dense footsteps. At the edge of the stage, when there was only a distance of one step, he actually stopped steadily. His figure was straight, his face was as calm as water, and his gaze was as sharp as a sword. The tip of the sword was pointed straight at Moe. In contrast, Moe's face was deathly pale. A trace of blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth as he stared blankly at Chern Hao. I lost. Many thanks. Many thanks. Chern Hao used many thanks as an opening remark, while Moe used many thanks to end the battle. Many people didn't understand, but there were also many who understood. But Moe's I lost was clearly heard by everyone. Only at this moment did everyone finally have the truest understanding of Chern Hao's strength. His tie with Hellion Wuzi was absolutely not because of that strange defensive ultimate art, and also absolutely not because of luck. Rather, he truly possessed this kind of strength. Not bad. Fang Yuan's face showed a slight smile. After looking at Chern Hao, he looked at Moe and said, "This Mo clan lad, although his aptitude is a bit lacking, but at such a young age, he has a trace of sword intent. That is really rare." Chairman, does that mean Moe can do it? Many thanks, Chairman. Li Ran immediately said with a trace of joy. Fang Yuan stared at Li Ran, but still nodded slightly, saying, "Let Hellion clan's lass also exchange moves with Chern Hao." Hearing Fang Yuan's words, Li Ran immediately frowned slightly. What? Is there a problem? No. Although Li Ran wanted to say there was a problem, he didn't say it in the end. The battle between Chern Hao and Hellion Wuzi, even Li Ran didn't expect it to have such a huge impact on Hellion Wuzi. These few days, Hellion Wuzi had a cold and emotionless face. Even a blind person could see how crazy she would be if she fought with Chern Hao again. Letting the two fight now was undoubtedly quite disadvantageous to Chern Hao, especially when Chern Hao had just fought. Fortunately, this was no longer a simple competition. If there was any danger at that time, he could just intervene. The two's conversation couldn't be concealed from the crowd, so when he heard Moe was chosen, Mo clan head's face immediately turned into a monkey's but from excitement. Now, he specifically pointed out Helian Wu Zi and Chun Hao's battle, and didn't mention Helian I Ching at all. This made Helian clan head Helian Lei's expression a little embarrassed, but he didn't dare to make a sound. Similarly, Helian Wu Zi, who was at the edge of the stage, when she heard she was going to fight with Chun Hao, her cold eyes suddenly shone with 2 rays of light. Her body swayed, and she directly jumped onto the stage. Looking at Helian Wu Zi's appearance, Chun Hao frowned slightly, but immediately jumped onto the stage as well. For eyes met, electric arcs crackled. Although Chun Hao was slightly immature, he was handsome and had an imposing appearance. Although Helian Wu Zi was expressionless, her figure was graceful, and her beauty was unparalleled. Looking at the two of them, especially when they thought about the last time the two of them had fought to the death, everyone's eyes were wide open even before the match started. They really wanted to know what kind of scene the two of them would be like this time. Although Helian Wu Zi hadn't fought with Helian I Ching and Mo Yue yet, after a few battles, the terrifying strength she displayed faintly surpassed Helian I Ching and Mo Yue. As for Chun Hao, everyone no longer made any judgments, because this abnormal level of existence simply couldn't be guessed with common sense. Interesting. Fang Yuan's gaze swept over Chun Hao and Helian Wu Zi, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile, as he thought to himself. Not using weapons? After the two faced each other for a while, looking at Helian Wu Zi's cold and emotionless face, Chun Hao took the initiative to break the silence, saying, "If it's like this, I don't dare to guarantee that I won't use that move." With just one sentence, Helian Wu Zi's almost numb and cold expression actually flashed with a trace of sullen anger. Although it disappeared in a flash, it didn't escape Chun Hao's eyes. Fortunately, Chun Hao's expression didn't change, but he thought to himself, Helian Wu Zi's current appearance more or less made Chun Hao feel a little guilty. After all, if a good girl lost her humanity because of that battle, it was Chun Hao's responsibility after all. But now, seeing the trace of sullen anger in Helian Wu Zi's eyes, Chun Hao felt relieved. At least there was still anger, right? This proved that she was still normal. Up to you. But what Chun Hao and everyone didn't expect was that Helian Wu Zi actually opened her mouth. It was still that ethereal voice, but it was emotionless and bone-chilling. Boom! Following Helian Wu Zi's words, what made everyone astonished was that, just like last time, Helian Wu Zi once again charged towards Chun Hao. However, the aura this time was much stronger than last time. The berserk crimson-red elemental energy, following that slender palm, was immediately like a crimson-red giant dragon, roaring and attacking Chun Hao with incomparable ferocity. It was like a giant dragon of flames, but it contained extreme coldness. Everyone, other than Li Ran and Fang Yuan, especially the experts on the platform, each and every one of them stared with their eyes wide open in shock. Even the Helian clan head was no exception. No one thought that Helian Wu Zi had actually advanced to such a realm, and even more so, no one thought that Helian Wu Zi's elemental energy could actually contain an extremely cold energy. What was going on? Even Chun Hao's eyes suddenly shrunk, feeling shocked in his heart. She actually also comprehended profound ice chi? And she even exposed it? P.S. Please recommend it, bookmark it, thank you. Chapter 59. Immediately after, Chun Hao faintly understood why Helian Wu Zi did this. Without a doubt, Helian Wu Zi also wanted to grab this opportunity to completely display her talent and strength in front of Fang Yuan. Chun Hao guessed correctly, but what Chun Hao didn't guess was that Helian Wu Zi did this not only because she wanted to be fancied by Fang Yuan, but the most important reason was that she wanted to jump out of the Helian family. Helian family's Tianyuan cave was filled with water attribute energy and was much gentler than Shao family's primordial spirit cave. It was the Helian family's true cultivation holy land. and Helian Wu Zi had comprehended water attribute energy precisely in Tianyuan Cave. And in the battle with Chen Hao last time, it wasn't only Chen Hao who benefited. Helian Wu Zi similarly, through Chen Hao, also mysteriously comprehended the profound ice chi. Water and ice were originally of the same origin. After comprehending one type, comprehending the other type would be much easier. But the two of them had only met once and comprehended each other. In the end, it was a little too shocking. One had to admit that the two's physiques and comprehension were extremely strong, or else they wouldn't be able to do something that ordinary martial masters simply couldn't achieve so easily. But now she had completely revealed her true self. Jump out of the Helian family. No matter what, she had to jump out of the Helian family. Ever since Helian Lei forced her to marry Helian Iching, there wasn't a moment when she wasn't thinking of jumping out of the Helian family. Chen Hao lightly shouted, and the elemental energy around his body also burst out without restraint. Boom, 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 in an instant terrifying attacks resounded throughout the entire arena. The two's figures were as fast as lightning. Palm shadows, fist shadows, leg shadows, and devastating icy cold elemental energy. Everyone stared in shock with their eyes wide open and drew in a breath of cold air. Especially Helian Iching and Moue. Only at this time did they truly understand that Helian Wuzi and Chen Hao, no matter who it was, were not people they could contend against. On the rostrum, Helian Lei's eyes were filled with shock, but at the same time, his brows were deeply furrowed. When Helian Wuzi had comprehended the water attribute energy, he had already seen Helian Wuzi's future potential. Therefore, out of selfishness, after testing Helian Wuzi and being rejected, he used his status as the clan head to forcefully betroth Helian Wuzi to his son, Helian Iching, and announced to the public. Towards Helian Wuzi's resistance, he only used the far-fetched reason of thinking for the clan to deal with it, because he clearly understood that only this way could he truly tie Helian Wuzi down. Otherwise, once Helian Wuzi, who wasn't a direct descendant of the Helian clan, reached a certain realm, leaving the Helian clan was inevitable. Although she could also be of great help to the Helian clan, in the end, it wasn't as practical as this, but now, Helian Wuzi didn't even look at him, and exposed her own hidden power. What made him even more surprised was that it wasn't water attribute energy, but rather the derivative energy, profound ice chi. When did she comprehend the profound ice chi? Why didn't she tell him? Why did he use it in front of everyone at this moment? Almost in an instant, he understood Helian Wuzi's intentions. He clearly understood that his little bit of selfishness had ultimately still shot himself in the foot. Helian Wuzi displayed this kind of talent, there was an 80 to 90% chance that she would be fancied by Feng Yuan. Although it wouldn't be to the extent of taking revenge on the Helian clan, wanting to gain benefits from Helian Wuzi, it would most likely be hopeless. Bam! Chen Hao and Helian Wuzi suddenly both soared into the air, their palms stretched out at the same time and collided head-on, erupting with a huge boom. Although Chen Hao had used all his strength, the difference in realm between him and Helian Wuzi meant that his elemental energy was much weaker in the end. His body immediately tumbled backwards, while Helian Wuzi only tumbled once before landing steadily on the ground. Her graceful figure didn't stop, her jade feet suddenly stomped, and with a boom, she once again charged towards Chen Hao, who had yet to land on the ground. She still couldn't kill Chen Hao, but the humiliation last time, she had to take it back and teach him a lesson. "You're the one who forced me." When Helian Wuzi's slender jade palm flickered with crimson light and appeared in front of Chen Hao suddenly said. At the same time as he spoke, bam! The collision of palms that everyone imagined didn't happen. Chen Hao's hand actually strangely grabbed onto Helian Wuzi's wrist. A clear and familiar bam-bam sound, accompanied by Chen Hao's oppressive groan of enduring Helian Wuzi's terrifying elemental energy, once again entered everyone's ears. The following scene, the others didn't think much of it, but Fang Yuan and the several young disciples he brought along all stared with wide eyes. Bam bam bam! Helian Wuzi screamed, but Chen Hao, who would rather endure her attacks and didn't care about his own injuries, once again used Golden Snake coiling sticky hand with an unstoppable force, even though Helian Wuzi was already mentally prepared, even though she displayed an extremely terrifying strength at this moment. But what made her incomparably ashamed and resentful was that she was once again entangled by Chen Hao. Stop! I admit defeat. Helian Wuzi didn't hesitate and said loudly. Her ethereal voice carried a trace of urgency and nervousness. With the previous experience, Helian Wuzi was clear that even if she didn't lose her rationality now, the final result wouldn't be any better. Especially when she thought of the 2 clear claw marks on her chest when she went back last time, she really didn't know what Chen Hao would do. Even if she could win, would she dare to accept it? She had already been humiliated once, and if it happened again, she would really have no face to see anyone. When Helian Wuzi admitted defeat and retracted the elemental energy in her body, Chen Hao also quickly released his grip and let go of Helian Wuzi's delicate body. Helian Wuzi was afraid that Chen Hao would do something even more excessive, but what she didn't know was that this time, Chen Hao really didn't think of making use of her human weakness of being a woman and a virgin. Victory or defeat wasn't too important now. He only wanted to fight to his heart's content. If he lost, then he lost. If he used Dragon Claw Hand to make Helian Wuzi angry and humiliated, then it wouldn't be justifiable. A spectator who opened their eyes wide and was prepared to watch a wonderful battle didn't expect it to end like this, making many people feel a little unsatisfied, and at this time, Fang Yuan also slowly retracted the probing mental strength he sent out. His face revealed a smile as he slowly stood up. Seeing this scene, everyone knew that the most crucial moment had arrived. Not bad, even the old man didn't expect that your cloud state, which is only a small county, could actually give the old man such a big surprise. Little girl, Helian Wuzi, is it? You and Chen Hao, this little fellow, actually both comprehended water and ice attribute energy. Moreover, the energy aura is extremely similar. It's really a little strange, as if you were a match made in heaven. Haha. This isn't something that can be done just by having high comprehension ability. You're one. When Fang Yuan saw the 2 entangled together, he had already guessed the reason why the energy aura in their bodies was similar. One had to know that different people, after comprehending different elemental energy, would have completely different auras. Because the comprehension environment was different, the grade of the energy would be different. But the water and ice attribute energy in Chen Hao and Helian Wuzi's bodies were almost the same grade. When Fang Yuan mentioned Helian Wuzi's eyes shone with a trace of joy. She knew she should have succeeded. However, Fang Yuan's following words caused Helian Wuzi's face to instantly turn red. Her beautiful eyes shone with intense hatred as she looked at Chen Hao, who didn't seem to have any reaction. Also, this little fellow is also not bad. Am I right? Although your talent is a little lacking, just based on this sword intent, you're also one. Fang Yuan continued. Helian Yiqing, who was filled with apprehension and anticipation, knew it was his turn soon. If Moe could be selected, he naturally could too. But what made him disappointed, despairing, and unwilling was that after Fang Yuan finished speaking, he actually didn't even look at him, and slowly sat down. The yearly Cloud State Martial Gathering ended in a way that no one had expected. Fang Yuan gave some instructions to Li Ran, Chen Hao and the rest before stepping into the air and leaving. Many forces congratulated the Shao clan, Mo clan, and Helian clan. Especially the Shao clan, they became the moon surrounded by stars. Everyone knew that after today, although the Shao clan's overall strength was still inferior to the Haolian clan, it wouldn't be long before they would inevitably replace the Haolian clan as the #1 clan in Cloud State. This was indisputable. Because Chen Hao could become Fang Yuan's direct disciple, he brought not only fame and status to the Shao clan, but also rich, substantial rewards. It was believed that in a few days, these rewards would arrive. Of course, the Hellion clan and the Mo clan would also receive them. But it would definitely be different. Chen Hao didn't accept the crowd's compliments. Instead, he walked through the crowd and directly went to the Li clan's viewing platform. He thought Buttface would find an opportunity to find him, but he didn't in the end. And Chen Hao was facing an intense competition, so he wasn't in a hurry to find Buttface. However, he asked Xiao Mei to inquire about Buttface's situation in the Li clan. And now, the Cloud State Martial Gathering was about to end, but Buttface still didn't come to find him. Chen Hao naturally understood Buttface's thoughts and had to come. Ha ha ha! Isn't my brother Tianxi awesome? Isn't he awesome? Ha ha! Didn't you say brother Tianxi couldn't do it? Say it again. If you have the ability, say it again. In the last few rows of the Chen clan's viewing platform, Buttface's face was full of pride and joy. He was even a little arrogant, and looked at the 4 youths behind him with hatred. It was just that Buttface's swollen face looked extremely comical. He's an ox. It's not like you're awesome. What brother Tianxi? With your appearance, I'm afraid he's already forgotten about you. You're the last in the group and relied on your family's money to sneak into the Li clan. It's not like you're awesome. What are you so proud of? That's right. Who do you think you are? Don't show off in front of us. In my opinion, you only acknowledged him as your brother, but he didn't even put you in his eyes. Nonsense. Buttface, whose face was bruised and swollen, immediately said angrily. Really? Then why don't you go find him? With his current status, he can just casually say a word and you can come to the Shao clan. I think you're just bluffing. P.S. Thanks for yesterday's tragedy? Chuan Liang Wu Zi, A Dream of Old Scenes? Luo Shi. Mo Qing Yi, Supervision Section 1, Weasel 22, Ru Bing Lai Hua, Feng Bi Yi 9 Friends Rewards and Support. Please add recommend tickets. Chapter 60. Buttface was tongue-tied, but he couldn't say anything. At this moment, the disciples sitting in front of the Li family's spectator stand suddenly quieted down. A young man who was close to Buttface tugged at him gently. The faces of the few youths who were confronting Buttface, and who had also injured Buttface, suddenly changed. They all looked ahead with a little bit of fear, and they all kept quiet out of fear. Not to mention them, even the head instructor of the Chen family's team looked rather humble and respectful as he stood up and clasped his hands at Chen Hao. Buttface. Chen Hao clasped his hands at the head instructor and shouted at Buttface, who could only see the back of the instructor. Although Chen Hao could only see Buttface's back, and Buttface had grown taller and stronger in the past 6 months, the back of Buttface's head stood out among the crowd. How could Chen Hao not recognize him? Chen Hao's familiar and slightly different voice made Buttface tremble, but he didn't dare to turn his head. He didn't want Chen Hao to see him like this. At first, Buttface had told them that Chen Hao was his brother Tianxi when he was fighting them with his life, because the 4 of them had spoken ill of Chen Hao. But after saying it, he regretted it. This was because Buttface felt that he had brought shame to Chen Hao. If he was outstanding, it wouldn't be a big deal. But in the eyes of others, he was the disciple with the worst potential in the Li family. Not only did he score last in the test, but because of his nickname, Buttface, he had become the target of ridicule. This was nothing. What was worse was that someone had said that he had paid money to enter the Li family. He had passed the test with his own strength. Why did they say that he had paid money? At first, Buttface was very angry. However, his parents, who had visited him twice in the past 6 months, had given Buttface some clues. Maybe what everyone said was true, therefore, although Buttface really wanted to meet Chen Hao, he had to restrain himself from doing so. Although Buttface was simple and honest, he was actually very intelligent. In the past, his mother didn't allow him to hang out with Chen Hao. She said that he was different from Chern Hao and that it would affect his future. Later, when Chern Hao became a disciple of the Xiao family, his mother asked Buttface to please Chern Hao's family. She said that it would be beneficial to his future, however. Buttface realized that his intention to get close to Chern Hao and his family would affect Chern Hao instead. Although Buttface knew that his brother Tianci would never look down on him, he still did it. He wanted to see his brother Tianci again when he became stronger. "Why are you hiding from me?" Chern Hao said again when he saw that Buttface didn't even turn his head. In the past, Buttface had always called him brother Tianci. But Chern Hao had never called himself brother. But now, in front of the Li family's disciples, Chern Hao naturally said it out loud. Moreover, when he looked at Buttface, there was a trace of brotherly care and concern. Things were different now. Chern Hao knew that with his current status in Yunzhou, as long as he showed a trace of affection, it would be enough to attract the attention of the Li family. This was the way of the world, and it existed everywhere. Brother Tianci. Hearing Chern Hao's affectionate voice, Buttface's emotions surged and he called out in a trembling voice. He knew that since Chern Hao had found him here, no matter what, he couldn't hide. He could only cover his swollen eye with one hand and slowly turn around. "You little," when Chern Hao saw Buttface turning around, a faint smile appeared on his face. However, when he saw Buttface's face, he stopped abruptly and his expression changed abruptly. A chilly aura was emitted from Chern Hao's body without any warning. Who was Buttface? His brother. He was Chern Hao's best friend, best brother, and the only brother that he truly recognized. When Chern Hao's family was suffering from hunger and cold, homeless and destitute, it was this simple, honest, and kind-hearted brother of his and his snobbish mother who had helped them in their hour of need. Although the current Chern Hao was not the old Chern Hao, he still remembered the kindness that Buttface and his family had done for him. In the past, when Buttface was bullied, he would at most drag Buttface away. He never dared to fight for Buttface because he was afraid that his family would be implicated again. At that time, he felt guilty for his only friend. It was not that he didn't want to, but he couldn't. But now? Chern Hao jumped to Buttface's side and removed Buttface's hand that was covering his face. Looking at the bruised and swollen eyes and bloodstains, Chern Hao's delicate and handsome face became incomparably cold. It was a kind of coldness that had never appeared even when he was fighting in the arena. "Who hit you?" Chern Hao asked coldly. Chern Hao's words caused the faces of the four youths beside Chern Hao to instantly turn pale, and they all shrank back. The head instructor of the Li family also became a little embarrassed. Even he didn't know how to deal with this situation. "Brother Tianci, no one hit me. I was practicing with a friend and accidentally got injured," Buttface stammered. However, Chern Hao's gaze was no longer on him. Instead, he looked at the four young men. "It was you? So sorry. It was Buttface who first." Slap, 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 slap. Two of the young men tried to apologize and explain. However, no one expected that Chern Hao wouldn't allow them to speak. He slapped them in the face as fast as lightning. Brother Chen, seeing this scene, if the head instructor didn't say anything, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. He could only brace himself and call out, "Slap, slap, slap." However, Chern Hao didn't care at all. After slapping the four young men until they looked like pig heads, he stopped and said arrogantly, "You don't have to explain. Buttface never looks for trouble. Buttface, come with me." "Brother Tianci." Buttface was a little shocked and shouted, "The Xiao family will talk to the head of the Li family. Let's go." Chern Hao didn't allow Buttface to refuse. He directly pulled him away and left under the gazes of the Li family's disciples, who were as silent as cicadas in winter. As for the four young men who had slapped Buttface, they were all turned into pig heads that were several times more miserable than Buttface. Several of their teeth had fallen out. They felt wronged and scared. Everyone felt Chern Hao's arrogance and domineering. However, even the head instructor didn't dare to make any moves. The bigger the fist, the harder the argument. What is the argument? The fist is the argument. Chun Hao's fist was naturally not strong, but he, who had leaped over the dragon gate, had a powerful backer. This was also a kind of strength. Although Chun Hao didn't care about this kind of strength, he didn't have any scruples when Buttface was slapped. Chun Hao didn't know that Buttface really didn't look for trouble. However, this time, the 4 young men who had turned into pig heads were indeed wronged. The 4 of them weren't the only ones who had said bad things about Chun Hao. However, Buttface had heard them and wanted to kill them. They had always looked down on Buttface. How could they let Buttface be so arrogant? Naturally, they beat him up violently. Search the house? I'll go? When Chun Hao pulled Buttface to the front of the Shao family's disciples, Xiao Ding had also returned to the front of the Shao family. Apparently, he was waiting for Chun Hao. After Chun Hao briefly introduced Buttface's situation, Xiao Ding didn't even frown. Buttface, who used to be Dong Liang, became Xiao Xiangliang. Then Xiao Ding told him about the matter that the city governor Li Ran and the other big families had discussed. Chun Hao asked in surprise. Is there a problem? Xiao Ding asked. I've never done this kind of thing before. I'm not good at it. How about Sister Mei, Ji Shan, Ji Fei, Xiao Ling Er, Buttface, and Ji Yan all go with me? The more the merrier. Chun Hao scratched his head and said. Among the people who were called by Chun Hao, except for Buttface, who had never seen the world and was a little silly, Xiao Ling Er just revealed a sweet smile, and Xiao Ji Yan just stared at Chun Hao in a daze. The rest of the people showed a little bit of excitement. You still remember your senior sister. At least you have a conscience. Xiao Mei's charming eyes and face didn't show any abnormalities as she stared at Chun Hao with a smile. What a brother! Ha ha! Xiao Jishan said without hiding anything. You still don't know? Go, go. Remember, don't let the people of the city governor's mansion laugh at us. Anyway, 50% is already ours. Xiao Ding said. Yes. Maybe it was because they knew that Chun Hao would leave the Yunzhou in a month. After they met up with the leader of the guards of the city governor's mansion, Xiao Jishan and the others clustered around Chun Hao and talked to him as they walked toward Xiao Jihan's family, the Dongfang family. Their task was to accompany the guards of the city governor's mansion to search the house. The search didn't involve the annihilation of the entire family. Dongfang Wankai and Dongfang Han were the only 2 males of the Dongfang family. Dongfang Wankai came to the Yunzhou alone a few decades ago and established the Dongfang family. Dongfang Han, who was also Xiao Jihan, was his only lifeline. Therefore, this search could only be considered as confiscation of property. Although the Dongfang family wasn't a martial arts family, they were the richest family in the Yunzhou. The death of Dongfang Wankai and Dongfang Han meant the destruction of the Dongfang family. Naturally, the Dongfang family's huge assets would be confiscated by the city governor's mansion. In view of the Xiao family's contributions, no one objected when Li Ran proposed that the Xiao family take 50% of the wealth. Furthermore, the Xiao family was appointed to participate. Xiao Ding didn't hesitate to give this lucrative task to Chun Hao. In return, Chun Hao didn't hesitate to pull in a few people who were close to him. The Dongfang family must have a lot of treasures. Moreover, that old fellow wants to become a martial arts family. He probably has a lot of good stuff. Otherwise, how could he trick a disciple of a big family like Dongfang Zan? Hee Xianghao, you don't have to care about what eldest uncle said just now. Take as much as you can. We haven't seen the world and we're poor. So what? Anyway, if you take it, no one will dare to laugh at you. Xiao Jishan said excitedly to Chun Hao when they entered the Dongfang family under the lead of the guards of the city lord's mansion, which seemed to have been sealed off long ago. P.S. Second update completed. Another week has passed. As usual, it will be released at midnight tomorrow. Tonight, the first update will be released at midnight. I sincerely hope that brothers and sisters, if you have time, please support Dark Mountain at midnight. Click, recommend tickets, etc. The results of my new book will depend on everyone. Please, see you at midnight. Please collect. Chapter 61. In the new week, please log on to Qidian to help Wushan. Member clicks and recommendation tickets are needed. Thank you. Please. Don't worry. Chun Hao smiled. The same goes for all of you. If you see something you like, just take it. Don't be polite. If you're polite, you'll be letting yourself down. I'm not feeling well, so I won't be going with you. I'm sorry. At this moment, Xiao Jiyan, who was pulled over by Xiao Mei, spoke with a trace of worry on her face. This kind of expression shouldn't appear on the face of a 13-year-old girl, especially the angelic Xiao Jiyan, who was once innocent and flawless. After Xiao Jiyan finished speaking, she did not give anyone a chance to persuade her. She immediately turned around and left. Everyone looked at each other. A bitter smile appeared on the corners of Chun Hao's mouth as he shook his head. Dongfang Han is really a bastard. It's all his fault. In these 3 years, Xiao Jiyan probably thinks that the person who treats her the best in the world is Dongfang Han. Xiao Jishan said. Xiao Jiyan is still young and naive. I'm afraid she won't be able to adjust in such a short time. Fortunately, Dongfang Han exposed his evil deeds in front of everyone. Otherwise, Xiao Jiyan might not believe that he's a despicable person. Junior brother, don't blame Xiao Jiyan. Xiao Mei said. I won't. Chen Hao shook his head. The scene of him meeting Xiao Jiyan for the first time appeared in his mind. He smiled and said, she's more suited to live in a fairy tale world. However, reality is cruel and ugly. With this blow, I believe she'll grow up. Alright, let's hurry up and catch up. Chen Hao felt that it was a pity for Xiao Jiyan. Originally, his relationship with Xiao Jiyan should have been the best in the Xiao family. However, because of Xiao Jihan and Xiao Jian's own indecisiveness, the two of them lost their originally relaxed relationship. Chen Hao knew that during this period of time, Xiao Jiyan was not only avoiding him but also Xiao Jihan. However, Chen Hao did not like this kind of personality. This time, when everything was over, Chen Hao called Xiao Jiyan along because he wanted to help her get rid of her inner demons. Unfortunately, at the last moment, Xiao Jiyan still retreated. Although Chen Hao's words sounded casual, Chen Hao knew that this matter with Xiao Jihan would probably become Xiao Jian's inner demon for a very long time. If she didn't get rid of this inner demon, her martial cultivation would probably be seriously affected. Chen Hao had already done what he needed to do. The rest was beyond his control. Everything depended on Xiao Jiyan. Brother Chen, we'll start searching now. If you see anything you like, feel free to take it. Don't worry, everything will be sent here for checking. You don't have to be polite. The guard leader came before Chen Hao and the others and said politely. Since the city lord had specifically asked Chen Hao to accompany him, how could he not understand the city lord's intentions? The Dongfang family was the wealthiest family in the Cloud State. Naturally, they would have a lot of jewels and things like that. Moreover, it was very likely that they had elixirs, weapons, and other things that martial artists needed. Alright, thanks a lot. Don't mention it, don't mention it. Not long after, batches of guards carried countless precious items over. Chen Hao and the others were dazzled by the sight, as they felt that every item was priceless. At first, Xiao Jishan, Buttface, and the others wanted to take everything. This was good, that was good, and so was that. As for the most direct gold and silver items, they didn't care about them at all. The guard leader and several people who were keeping records checked the items and recorded them on a list. When they found something good, they would ask Chen Hao. As long as Chen Hao and the others liked something, they wouldn't record it. Commander, we found a secret door in Dongfang Wansai's study room. I don't dare to open it without permission. Please go and check it out. 1 hour later, A guard came over quickly and reported in a deep voice. The guard leader was delighted. Could it be a treasure house? Brother Chen, why don't you go with me? Your friends can pick whatever they like here. It's okay if they can't take it away. I'll help you send it back, hee hee. Okay. Chen Hao replied. He was also looking forward to it. The Dongfang family was rich and had the ambition to become a martial arts family. However, they hadn't found anything useful for martial artists, such as elixirs. Something was wrong. Now that they found a secret door, it should be something valuable. In the huge study room, under the carpet under the desk, there was a secret door. If it wasn't for the big movement of the Dongfang family, it would be difficult to find it. When Chen Hao and the guard leader arrived, a few guards had just found the mechanism of the secret door and opened it. Under the secret door, there was a flight of stairs that led straight down. The inside was bright and clear. When Chen Hao's sharp senses extended over, he immediately sensed the aura of a spiritual herb. The best items of Dongfang Wankai must be here. Brother Chen, you can pick something from here. I'm sure you won't miss it. Let's go down and have a look. You lead the way and check if there are any mechanisms. Yes. The guards cautiously walked into the secret room one after another. After breaking through 3 iron gates in a row, a bright light suddenly shone on everyone's faces. The dazzling light of jewels and treasures made Chen Hao and the others suck in a breath of cold air one by one. Even the guard leader didn't expect the Dongfang family to be so rich. How could they be just the richest family in Yunzhou? All of you, stand guard outside, the guard leader said in a deep voice. Yes. Hearing the leader's words, although everyone was reluctant, they still obediently retreated. Brother Chen, these are all priceless treasures. Take whatever you like. Pick the most valuable ones, take as much as you can. Thank you. Brother, where did this Dongfang family come from? I'm afraid it's not as simple as it looks. Chen Hao asked. I'm not sure about that. I'm afraid the governor didn't expect the Dongfang family to be so rich. The guard leader shook his head and said, Take your pick. After you're done, I'll ask someone to report to the governor. All right, Chen Hao said with a smile. After that, he pretended to look around and touch this and that. Seeing that the guard leader was immersed in the treasures and no longer paying attention to him, Chen Hao fixed his eyes on a direction and approached it silently. The aura of the elixir came from there. Although there was only one aura in the entire treasury, Chen Hao could clearly feel that even the level 6 elixirs that Xiao Ding gave him could not be compared to the aura of this elixir. This was what Chen Hao really wanted. After removing some of the treasures, Chen Hao frowned. It was actually a wall. Is it sealed in a secret compartment in the wall? Seeing this, Chen Hao was not disappointed. Instead, he was even more surprised. The Dongfang family hid it so carefully, which was enough to prove the preciousness of this elixir. After a moment of careful observation, Chen Hao gently pressed his hand on a protrusion not far away. After testing it a few times, he turned it gently. The wall actually slowly opened, and a pitch-black, dull, and extremely ordinary-looking box appeared in front of Chen Hao's eyes. The box was not big, only the size of a fist. There were no patterns or carvings, but it had the fine texture of a tree. When Chen Hao held it in his hand, he was shocked. It was unexpectedly heavy. What made Chen Hao even more surprised was that the aura of the elixir came from the box itself, and not the items in the box. Could this box be made of elixir? Chen Hao was a little surprised. However, this was obviously not the time to study it, so he directly put it in his pocket. After carefully checking that there was nothing else in the secret compartment, he quietly closed it. Then, he swaggered to pick some items that he liked, and he was rather impolite. When Chen Hao walked out of the treasury, although the guard leader did not have any dissatisfaction, his expression twitched a little. What kind of person is this? He is too impolite, it can't be? When Xiao Jishan and the rest saw Chen Hao's appearance, they were also stunned and speechless. You young masters and young misses don't understand people who are afraid of being poor. Let's go, let's go, Chen Hao said with a slight smile on the corners of his mouth. After he finished speaking, he took the lead and walked out. They saw that this brother actually used a huge carpet to make a bag that was even bigger than himself, and bent his body, carrying it on his back. Looking at Chen Hao's back, everyone looked at each other. They were originally embarrassed by the guard's stares, but at this time, they suddenly felt that compared to Chen Hao, they were simply too pure. Brother Chen, the carriage has already been prepared outside. It will directly send you back to the Shao family. The guard leader followed and said, Is there another carriage? The carriage is not very big. When the guard leader saw Chen Hao's expression, he almost collapsed and could not help but say. But after saying it, he regretted it and hurriedly said, But, as long as Brother Chen is willing, calling for another carriage is not a problem. No need, I am just joking with you. Anyway, half of it belongs to the Shao family, we can just casually take some as a token of appreciation. Let's go, let's go. P.S. Brothers and sisters who have finished reading, please vote for Wu Shan. This new book is very, very needed. Please everyone. Today's third watch will explode, the second watch will be at around 1 a.m., the third watch will be at around 7 p.m. Seeking all encouragement and support. Thank you for yesterday. Tragedy? Chuan Liang Wu Zi, fish that can't really swim, Mo Xie Yi, Ru Bing Lai Hua, Feng Bi Yi. Also, thank you classmate Wu Chun 369 for your understanding. Chapter 62. Looking for recommendation tickets, member clicks, collection, gifts, etc. My new book is not easy, and I urgently need everyone's help. Thank you. Cloud State City, the Shao clan's encampment. When Chen Hao and the others returned from their rewarding journey, they saw that the encampment manor was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and was filled with a festive atmosphere. Luxurious carriages were parked on both sides of the wide road outside the entrance, and along the way, numerous well-dressed and luxurious people brought along one or two young men and women, as well as servants carrying gifts, as they poured into the Shao clan's encampment with faces beaming with happiness. Shao Guan, as well as several elders and guest elders who had rushed over from their families, stood at the entrance to welcome the guests with glowing faces. Sister Mei, what is this? A celebration banquet? Chen Hao asked in surprise as he saw the scene from afar. You can say that. This is also a tradition. Every year, on the day of the Cloud State Martial Gathering, all the big families will open their doors for guests. Merchants, nobles, and small forces from all over Yunzhou County who had business dealings with or wanted to cooperate with him would pay him a visit. This is also one of the main sources of income for us martial arts families. A few years ago, Xiao Mei's charming eyes gazed at the somewhat crowded luxurious carriage through the window of the carriage. Her expression flashed with a hint of sadness. After a slight pause, she continued, Because our Shao clan was suppressed by the Helian clan in every aspect, Yunzhou's martial meet was getting worse year by year. At that time, there were not many people around, it was cold and cheerless. Xiao Mei turned her small face to look at Chen Hao. Her face showed a touch of emotion as she stared at Chen Hao and said, But now, it's all good, because of you. Thank you. Yes, Xiang Hao, you don't know how miserable we were 2 years ago. Motherf *Ker, they are all snobbish people. Now that they know you will be great in the future, you see, this year, our Shao family's doorstep will be crowded. But, this feeling is really glorious, Xiang Hao, you can't leave and never return. Forget about your brothers. Even if you look at us, you can't forget about the great beauty sister Mei and the little cutie Ling Er, right? Pa. Xiao Mei slapped Xiao Jishan's head and said angrily, What nonsense are you talking about? Although that's what they said, both Xiao Mei and Di Ling Yan's face turned red. Brother Tianxi is not that kind of person. The simple and honest butt-face didn't hide his admiration for Chern Hao at all. He stared at Xiao Jishan with a serious expression. The corner of Chen Hao's mouth revealed a faint smile. He didn't say anything, but his deep black eyes flashed with an emotion that the crowd couldn't quite understand but made their hearts tremble. His eyes stared out of the car, as if they had become illusory in the past. He had pursued immortality all his life. In countless fields, he had created countless splendor and glory that shook the entire world. But at that time, had he ever been truly happy? In the eyes of the world, he was cold, merciless, overbearing, and stubborn. No one could enter his heart. Even the most beautiful woman in the world could only make him stop for a moment. She was just a tool for him to vent his physical desires. No one could stop him. Until the last moment of his life, he was still alone in this world. Countless psychologists had studied him. The conclusion was that he was an orphan. After his childhood experience and his amazing talent, he had encountered some people who had approached him with ulterior motives and hurt him for their own benefit. This had caused him to close his heart and become cold and merciless. His heart was as hard as ice. This was indeed the case, but it wasn't completely the case, because as his achievements became higher and higher, even those who had treated him sincerely admired and respected him. But more than that, they feared him. No one dared to treat him as a friend, and no one thought that they were qualified to be his friend. No woman had the confidence to enter his heart. Who would share the glory and glory? If there was no one to share the glory and glory with, how could there be true happiness? What was the meaning of that? He stubbornly believed that he hadn't done enough. He stubbornly believed that one day, someone would understand him. But in the end, he didn't do it. Now, he had become Chern Hao, and Chern Hao was him. Chern Hao was just a teenager. He didn't have the glory and glory of his father. But he had the things that his father didn't have and longed for, such as family and friendship. A little achievement, compared to his past self, was really just a little achievement. However, the changes he had brought to Xiao Mei, Xiao Ling Buttface, Xiao Jishan, and the other people close to him made Chen Hao feel warm from the bottom of his heart. It was a warmth that he had never tasted before. Is this what true happiness looks like? Is this true happiness? In the depths of his heart, his other self, whose heart was as hard as ice, felt as if he was bathing in the warm and gentle sunshine. Gradually, he melted and was overflowing with spring. At this moment, to the surprise of Xiao Mei, Xiao Jishan, and the others, an invisible aura suddenly emitted from Chern Hao's body. That aura was like the warmest and most gentle sunshine in the world. It enveloped and illuminated them. Everyone had a mysterious and profound feeling. At this moment, they seemed to have touched Chern Hao's heart and entered Chern Hao's world. As they bathed under the warm and gentle sunlight, it caused their souls to seem as if they'd become white clouds that drifted in the sky, unrestrained and unrestrained. They also seemed as if they'd become fish that swam freely in the water, roaming freely and following their hearts. The galloping sound of the horses, the shouting of the coachman, and the noise of the crowd gradually faded away in everyone's hearts. The giant carriage became quiet, but it was filled with a faint, lively aura. That was the vitality of the fusion of souls and the resonance of souls. Unknowingly, everyone slowly closed their eyes. What a comfortable feeling! The coachman driving the carriage suddenly felt that his mind was very peaceful. A kind of joy that he had never felt before appeared in his heart. What made him feel even more strange was that even the old horse that was pulling the carriage seemed to have suddenly glowed with vigor. Its strenuous footsteps also became lighter, as if it was stepping on a musical note, making the carriage more stable. "Ah, we're here." While the coachman was still in a daze, he suddenly discovered that the carriage had already arrived at the entrance of the Xiao family's encampment. He hurriedly pulled the reins and loudly shouted, "Nay!" The subtle atmosphere suddenly disappeared as Chern Hao's mind returned. Everyone also came back to their senses. They were incomparably astonished. What just happened? Chief Instructor, it's us. At this moment, Chen Hao stuck his head out and shouted to Xiao Guan, who was standing at the entrance, "There are a lot of things. Can our carriage go in?" Good, good. Quickly put them down and go to the banquet hall. Elder Xiao, the head of the family, and the mayor are all waiting for you. When Xiao Guan saw that it was Chen Hao and the others, he naturally understood what Chen Hao meant by a lot of things. He immediately said with a rare smile. The banquet lasted until late at night. Although Chen Hao's heart was reluctant, and he was still thinking about the black box that he got from the Dongfang family, he still insisted on bringing it to the end. It was not because he enjoyed the flattery of others and was surrounded by stars. Those were meaningless to him. He insisted until the end only because of the Xiao family. In the wee hours of the morning, after the so-called important guests gradually dispersed, Chen Hao returned to his room. Tomorrow, he would leave Yunzhou City and return to the Xiao family's headquarters. In only a month's time, Chen Hao would have to leave Yunzhou. Therefore, what Chen Hao wanted most now was to return to Taiping town and quietly stay with his parents, brother, and sister for a month. He knew that all of this was just the beginning. If he wanted to protect his current glory and status, he had to keep moving forward. Leaving was a must, and it was inevitable. After Chen Hao locked the door, he directly walked into the cultivation room and sat cross-legged on the mat. He took out the black box that filled him with curiosity. The moment he held it in his hand, a strange wave suddenly appeared in Chen Hao's mind. What surprised Chen Hao was that this wave was actually out of his control. It was like a tentacle that made a slight hissing sound and escaped from between his eyebrows. It was colorless and formless. Even with Chen Hao's amazing eyesight, he could not see any abnormalities. However, his mind could sense it very clearly. It was a thin and pure energy that seemed to be spiritual energy, directly entwining around the black box, Hua. At this moment, an unbelievable scene appeared in front of Chen Hao's eyes. The pitch-black box, following the contact of the tentacle, suddenly emitted a bright light, instantly illuminating the entire cultivation room. At the same time, a majestic and pure energy flowed along the tentacle and started to enter between Chen Hao's eyebrows at a terrifying speed. What shocked Chen Hao even more was that the energy had clearly entered his body, but the moment it entered his mind, it disappeared without a trace. This familiar feeling made Chen Hao's eyes widen. Back when he was cultivating in the Magic Cloud Mountains, his origin energy mysteriously disappeared. Wasn't it like this? At that time, Chen Hao did not understand what was going on at all. He even thought that there was something wrong with his body. But now, Chen Hao could clearly feel that there was another mysterious existence in his body. Otherwise, how could it be that he could not control it and draw out his energy? How could the extracted energy disappear without a trace after fusing with his body? How could this be? Chen Hao was shocked. He realized that his body was still under his control and was not affected in any way. However, he could not stop this strange thing. Even if he threw the wooden box far away, it was useless. The tentacle that spread out from between his eyebrows was still locked onto the wooden box, causing it to float in the air and continue to absorb the energy within. "Who are you? Who are you?" Chen Hao asked loudly in his mind in shock. This time, it was different from the last time because he knew very well that he was now Chen Hao in Li Yuan's body. It was impossible for there to be another him in his mind. Second update. Brothers and sisters watching Proud Heaven, please support Dark Mountain while it's free for the public. This is very important to Dark Mountain, please. Chapter 63. Bang, bang, bang. What answered Chen Hao was the throbbing from the depths of his mind, like the beating of a heart. The sound was very low, but it was vigorous and powerful. Other than that, there was no other abnormality. No matter how Chen Hao questioned, there was no other response. But as time went by, when the black box became smaller and smaller, and more energy entered Chen Hao's mind, the beating syllables became more and more vigorous, as if they were filled with a kind of breathtaking power. Chen Hao's mind was completely integrated into it unconsciously. At this moment, the originally very low sound suddenly exploded in Chen Hao's mind like the evening drum and morning bell, making Chen Hao's mind stop for a moment. What is this place? Chen Hao's gaze was filled with astonishment and shock. He only felt his mind rumble for a moment, and his consciousness seemed to have been warped and stagnated for a moment. But when he recovered his consciousness once more, he noticed to his astonishment that he was in a gray and hazy space. An aura that was desolate as if it came from the primeval times suffused the entire space like smoke. A gust of wind rose, and the gray smoke seemed to condense into brilliant sword lights in an instant. With an incomparably fierce aura, the sword lights stabbed at Chen Hao as fast as lightning. At this moment, Chen Hao was filled with nervousness, and he felt unprecedented terror. He wanted to dodge, but it was utterly too late, and the fierce and terrifying sword light had arrived before him. Ah! Chen Hao cried out in shock, and with a bang, he crashed into the wall of the cultivation room. His entire body was covered in cold sweat, and his face was pale, but his eyes were wide open in shock. The illusion in his mind had already disappeared, and his mind had also returned to his body. Chen Hao lay on the ground with a dumbstruck expression, and he was unable to calm the shock in his heart for a long time. In his mind, those numerous swift and fierce sword lights still appeared clearly, and they seemed as if they'd instantly transformed his soul into powder, resurrection from the dead. Chen Hao clearly felt that he had walked through the gates of hell. His body was covered in cold sweat, and he felt extremely dispirited. It was as if that moment had consumed all his energy, and even his eyelids became extremely heavy. What is going on? Resisting the sleepiness, Chen Hao stood up with difficulty. The black box was gone, and there was only a craft paper-colored handkerchief on the ground. The handkerchief seemed to be damaged, and it was covered with small golden words. Is this the thing in the box? It should be. Junior brother, you. Chen Hao's last thought stopped. He faintly heard Xiao Mei's voice, but his eyes closed uncontrollably. In an instant, he fell into a deep sleep and no longer felt anything. At this moment, it was already late at night. The entire Xiao clan's encampment was silent. If not for everyone meditating and cultivating, they would have already fallen asleep. As Chen Hao's personal instructor, Xiao Mei lived next door to Chen Hao, and the cultivation room was only separated by a wall. When Chen Hao screamed and crashed into the wall, Xiao Mei would not have been able to hear it due to the thick walls of the cultivation room. But tonight, Xiao Mei did not sleep. She was cultivating in the cultivation room, and was immersed in a strange state. She happened to hear Chen Hao's scream and the sound of him crashing into the wall. Xiao Mei didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but the mysterious feeling she had in the carriage because of Chen Hao made her feel an aura she had never felt before after waking up. It was as if her soul had been baptized, and even the air she breathed had a subtle change to it. What made her even more surprised was that she could faintly feel that the stagnant 9th-grade martial master barrier seemed to have loosened a little. That feeling was very subtle, and Xiao Mei could clearly feel that it would not be long before she could break through the 9th-grade martial master barrier and step into the realm of martial king. It was because of this feeling that Xiao Mei returned to the cultivation room early and entered a state of cultivation. What was different from her previous cultivation was that this time, her perception seemed to have merged with the surrounding heaven and earth. A new path of cultivation appeared in front of her. It was also because of this strange state that Xiao Mei heard Chen Hao's scream. Xiao Mei called out to Chen Hao a few times, but there was no response. She became more and more worried. Chen Hao's scream was obviously because he had encountered an extremely frightening situation. Otherwise, with Chun Hao's abnormal calmness, Xiao Mei could not think of anything that could make him scream like that. Frowning slightly, Xiao Mei suddenly gathered her origin energy and opened the door to Chun Hao's room. When Xiao Mei walked into the cultivation room and saw Chun Hao lying motionless by the wall, she immediately cried out in alarm. Her figure flashed and she appeared in front of Chun Hao. Junior brother, what happened to you?" Xiao Mei hurriedly helped Chun Hao up. She discovered that Chun Hao was covered in cold sweat and his face was slightly pale. However, his breathing and heartbeat were normal, and there were no injuries on his body. It was as if he was sleeping, and there was no expression of pain on his face. After using her origin energy to examine him, Xiao Mei finally let out a long sigh of relief. She frowned slightly and muttered, "How could this be? Could it be that junior brother is cultivating some special cultivation technique? What is this?" Xiao Mei's gaze inadvertently fell on the broken handkerchief on the ground. It was covered with small golden characters. She gently picked up Chun Hao and picked up the handkerchief. It was densely covered with golden characters, and all of them were complex immortal characters. Xiao Mei widened her eyes and looked from beginning to end. She could only recognize a few numbers. Could it be the cultivation technique that junior brother is cultivating? Xiao Mei thought to herself, it should be. It is very likely that the old ancestor passed it down to junior brother. But how could it be broken? Xiao Mei was a little puzzled, but she didn't delve into it. She directly carried Chun Hao out of the cultivation room. After placing Chun Hao on the bed, Xiao Mei hesitated for a moment. Her face flashed with a hint of blush, but she still reached out and carefully took off Chun Hao's sweat-soaked outer clothes. She quickly covered him with a blanket and placed the broken handkerchief beside Chun Hao's pillow. Then, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared blankly at Chun Hao, who seemed to be sleeping soundly. In just a short month of contact, Xiao Mei, as his personal instructor, had witnessed his rapid growth. In the beginning, Xiao Mei was indeed his instructor, but that was only for the first few days. After that, she became like a personal nanny, taking care of everything Chun Hao did. When she first met Chun Hao, she did indeed treat Chun Hao as an underage younger brother. However, as they interacted more and more, Xiao Mei's view unknowingly changed. Sometimes, she even felt that she was younger than Chun Hao. This was especially true when Chun Hao occasionally spoke as if he was teaching him. It had to be said that Xiao Mei had gained a lot from Chun Hao. Especially the wonderful feeling she had today. Xiao Mei knew that if she hadn't followed Chun Hao for this period of time, although she would have been able to advance to Martial Emperor, it would have taken a very long time. However, now that she had comprehended the barrier, it wouldn't take long for her to step into Martial Emperor. This speed was even faster than some experts who had advanced to grade 9 Martial Master before the age of 20. Xiao Mei was a mature flower. Both mentally and physically this was the case. Gazing at this youth who was only 13 years old, she actually had a feeling that made her face blush and her heart race. It was a kind of attachment that didn't want to be separated from him, a kind of extravagant hope that she would always be by his side like this. Xiao Mei knew what this attachment, this extravagant hope, was, but she could only bury it deep in her heart. However, she knew that this was destined to be an impossible thing. Even if she could turn back time and return to the same age as Chun Hao, it was still impossible, because his monstrous talent was not on the same level as hers. He was destined not to belong here, and no one could keep his heart. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of Xiao Mei's mouth. Gazing at Chun Hao's delicate, handsome, and slightly immature face, Xiao Mei gently shook her head, throwing away the unrealistic fantasy from her mind. He's only my junior brother, only 13 years old. He's still a child. I just want to witness his miracle, his glory, isn't that right? As long as there's a day when he still remembers me as his senior sister, that's enough, Xiao Mei muttered in her heart. Looking at Chun Hao's complexion gradually returning to normal, she slowly stood up and quietly left, No one knew that on this night, a charming and gentle girl had inadvertently opened her heart and then quietly closed it, carefully sealing it away. No one knew that from then on, that heart only belonged to that one person, and no one else could intrude into it while Chun Hao was deep in sleep. He did not know when he had entered into a dream. In his dream, the sharp sword light kept appearing over and over again. From the first time he was frightened, he gradually calmed down. In a trance, he seemed to have transformed into the sword light. Over and over again, he felt the desolate and ancient aura that was contained in the sword light. Only when the sun was high in the sky did Chun Hao slowly wake up. The moment his eyes slowly opened, if someone were to see it, they would definitely be shocked. That flash of light was like an incomparably sharp sword that could shake one's soul. However, Chun Hao didn't feel anything. He only felt refreshed, as if he had never been so spirited before. Slowly getting up, Chun Hao saw that his outer clothes had been taken off, and the tattered craft paper like handkerchief next to his pillow. The corner of Chun Hao's mouth curled into a smile. He knew that it was Xiao Mei's doing. Before falling asleep, he heard Xiao Mei's voice, so he didn't worry at all and slept very soundly. Picking up the tattered handkerchief, Chun Hao slowly unfolded it. Seeing the dense golden lines of immortal characters, his eyes shone with a bright light. With his photographic memory, he had learned a lot of immortal characters from old Xiao. Although it wasn't complete, he could basically read them all. These characters were undoubtedly the incantations of a mental cultivation method. That alone wasn't strange, but what was strange was that Chun Hao felt that these incantations were extremely similar to the secret to long life. When he saw the 8th level, 9th level, 10th level, and so on, Chun Hao's hands trembled with excitement. Third update, about 9,000 words. Brothers and sisters, please give Dark Mountain some support. Thank you. Something happened at home tonight, so tomorrow's update will probably be around noon. I'll tell you in advance so that you won't be anxious. Please bookmark, recommend, click. Chapter 64. 18 levels. There are actually 18 levels. The 9th level of the secret to long life is already a 7th level cultivation technique, then the 18th level. Chun Hao took a deep breath. He faintly felt that this cultivation technique seemed to have exceeded the scope of a martial artist, just like ancient martial arts and Taoist cultivation technique. They were no longer on the same level. However, the secret to long life linked these two completely different levels together. It was a set of cultivation techniques that could be used as a main cultivation technique after advancing from martial disciple to martial god. How could the Dongfang clan have the second half of the secret to long life? Where did they come from? Why did Elder Xiao only know the first 9 levels? Questions appeared in Chun Hao's mind one after another. This remnant scroll seemed to have been divided into two after two people fought over it. The 8th and 9th levels only had the beginning numbers, but the true cultivation technique had been broken. Only after the 10th level did it become complete. What did this mean? Could it be that Elder Xiao had the first 9 levels of the scroll? Elder Xiao had once told Chun Hao that the secret to long life was a 7th level cultivation technique with a total of 9 levels. The cultivation technique for the 9th level had also been passed on to Chun Hao. At this moment, Chun Hao verified the words of the 8th and 9th level of the scroll. This made Chun Hao realize that the 8th and 9th level that Elder Xiao passed on to him didn't have any problems. However, the first few words were similar in meaning, but the words were different. This proved that Elder Xiao had only inferred the first few words based on the contents of the 8th and 9th level. Just as Chun Hao was about to continue reading, there was movement outside the door. Chun Hao hurriedly put away the remnant scroll. Then Xiao Mei opened the door and saw Chun Hao sitting on the bed. She said, "You're awake?" "Yes, I just woke up. Sister Mei, thank you. Otherwise, I would have to sleep on the floor for the whole night," Chun Hao said. "Then hurry up and wash up. We're about to leave. Junior brother, be careful when you cultivate in the future. Don't be too tired. Xiao Mei said. Okay. He returned to the Xiao clan and stayed for nearly a month. During this month, he should have accompanied his family and relaxed. After all, he didn't know when he would return. However, during this 1 month, Chen Hao did not relax at all. His family had been taken to the Xiao family by Lord Xiao. His younger brother and sister had started to attend classes in the Xiao family's school. But Face had become a disciple of the Xiao family. His family had also returned to Taiping Town. Moreover, because of him, they would definitely not suffer any grievances in the Xiao clan. This should be something to be happy about. However, after Chen Hao finished reading The Secret Art of Long Life's remnant scroll, he had a lot on his mind, especially after confirming it with Old Man Xiao and calling Xiao Jiyan over to ask her about it face to face. Chen Hao's brows never relaxed. It was as if there was a thorn in his back and a fishbone in his throat. Based on Chen Hao's understanding of Xiao Jihan, he definitely did not believe that Xiao Jihan would commit suicide. However, at that time, Xiao Jihan did seem to have lost his humanity, not even sparing his own father's corpse. When Xiao Jihan stabbed his finger into his throat, Chen Hao's sharp senses had indeed sensed Xiao Jihan's life force rapidly fading away. Although it was hard to believe, Xiao Jihan was indeed dead. Chen Hao could not believe his own senses, but at that time Li Ran, the Emperor of Will, and the chairman of the Will Guild, the super powerhouse, if Xiao Jihan had not really committed suicide, how could he have escaped their eyes? But now, if Chen Hao's guess was correct, Xiao Jihan was not only not dead, but had also mastered the complete secret art of long life. Moreover, he had been cultivating the secret art of long life from the beginning to the end. However, he had only mastered the first 3 stages. As for the 4th to 9th stages, he had learned them from Xiao Jiyan, who was not scheming at all. The reason why Xiao Jihan was able to hide from everyone's eyes and senses was because he had cultivated the secret of longevity to the 5th level. He was able to execute one of the cultivation techniques recorded in the Remnant Scroll, the Art of Solitude, which could only be executed with the secret of longevity as the foundation. Using the secret art of long life's primordial energy to activate the secret art of long life, not only would one's heartbeat and breathing stop, they would enter a state of suspended animation. Even the chairman of the Will Guild, Fang Yuan, was deceived. One could imagine how mystical this cultivation method was. The reason why Chen Hao was so sure was because he had obtained Old Man Zhao's secret from back then. Dong Fang Wang Kai, Dong Fang Han. Their surnames were Dong Fang was Zhen. Zhen should be their real surname. Old Man Xiao was adopted by a lone cultivator expert when he was young. The expert also adopted another person called Zhen Hu. The enemy who had almost forced Old Man Xiao to his death was his senior brother, Zhen Hu. Their master had imparted the secret art of long life to them, but he had only taught them the 3rd stage. The reason for this was because their master was worried that the 2 of them would be too arrogant and bite off more than they could chew, fearing that their foundations were not solid enough and would blindly cultivate beyond their realms. Back then, Old Man Xiao did not mind, but Zhen Hu thought his master was intentionally hiding something and harbored hatred in his heart. Once, their master went out to travel and said he would return in half a month, but after waiting for half a year, their master still did not return. Zhen Hu could not endure it and sneaked into their master's cultivation room, coincidentally being discovered by Old Man Xiao. At that time, Zhen Hu had already found the handkerchief that recorded their master's secret art. Old Man Zhao's cultivation was not as high as Zhen Hu's. He suddenly appeared and attacked Zhen Hu, catching him off guard and only managed to tear off a small portion of the handkerchief. Zhen Hu was furious. How could he still care about their relationship? Old Man Xiao could only escape. Originally, Zhen Hu had chased him all the way to the peak of Heavenly Road and forced him into a corner. But old man Shao did not want his master's secret art to be easily obtained by the unscrupulous Zhen, who, so he could not bear the torture and resolutely jumped off a bottomless cliff. But old man Shao did not expect himself to be saved from death's door and his cultivation to increase greatly. But he could not find Zhen Hu, and when he returned to his master's secret area, what made him even more miserable was that he had already turned into ashes. Old man Shao waited there for an entire year, but there was still no news from his master, so he could only leave. Thus, the current Shao clan was formed. Rest assured, Go. If it is really as you guessed, he will not dare to return for several years. Furthermore, old man already has the latter half of the secret art. Even if he comes, what can he do? Old man Shao said confidently the night before Chen Hao left. The main reason why he, a rank 7 martial emperor, was limited to his current cultivation was because the longevity secret art was incomplete. Now that he had obtained the latter 9 layers, as well as the several secret skills that could only be used with the longevity secret art, old man Zhao's cultivation would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. This was also the only thing that Chen Hao could be comforted about. As for Xiao Jian foolishly being duped by Xiao Jihan into obtaining the first 9 layers of the longevity secret art, she could only let it go. How could he blame an ignorant little girl for that? Similarly, during this month, what puzzled Chen Hao the most was that his crippled father actually gave him a small knife. The knife was only the length of 5 fingers. Without any explanation, his father instructed him to carve wood with the knife. What shocked Chen Hao even more was that his father did not allow him to use any origin power, nor did he allow him to use brute force. Instead, he taught him all kinds of carving techniques, as well as the mental state required for each technique. For an entire month, his father would watch him carve wood for 2 hours every night. Chen Hao did not ask. However, he was certain that his father was definitely not an ordinary person. At the very least, he was definitely not an ordinary person in the past. Updated the first chapter. This chapter has a bit less words, so I'll update it first. I'll strive for more in the next chapter. Please click bookmark recommend. Thank you. Chapter 65. A month's time passed quickly. Chen Hao, Helian Wuzi and Moyui, under the grand send-off ceremony of the city lord's mansion and the 3 great clans, carried simple luggage and set foot on the road to the capital. The 3 of them hadn't traveled far. Although their cultivation was close to the peak of martial master, they didn't have any experience in Jianghu. From Cloud State City to Zhen Yuan Kingdom's capital, to Qian City, 4 experts like Fang Yuan who could fly, it would take 1 day. But for Chen Hao and the other 2, it would take at least half a month's time. Go, go, go! Chen Hao and the other 2 sat in the luxurious carriage arranged by the city lord, Li Ran. No one paid attention to each other, but this was something that couldn't be helped. Moyui's sword infatuation quotient was almost 0. At all times, he was holding the thick and broad sword. His eyes were gentle and affectionate. He used his hands to gently caress the sword from the beginning to the end. It was as if he was caressing the smooth and delicate skin of his lover. It made Chen Hao feel goosebumps all over his body. As for Helian Wuzi, there was no need to even mention it. Putting aside her cold and indifferent face that kept strangers away from her, she even gave Chen Hao a vicious look from time to time. That appearance clearly showed that she was humiliating Chen Hao and still harbored hatred in her heart. It was just that she didn't have the ability to teach Chen Hao a lesson for the time being. Otherwise, Chen Hao was sure that she would definitely start a fight at the first opportunity. After estimating the distance, Chen Hao lifted the curtain at the back of the carriage and looked at the crowd that was already a few miles away. Chen Hao knew that they probably couldn't see him anymore, at least not his face. But Chen Hao's eyesight far exceeded that of ordinary people. As he squinted his eyes, he could clearly see the crowd in the distance. His mother was looking around, his sister was crying, His brother was tightly pursing his lips to hold back his tears, and Butt-Face was lightly hugging his brother's shoulder. Little Ling Er was pouting and frowning as she stared in his direction, as if she was thinking about something. She looked around, her eyes shining with a trace of tears. She gazed tenderly at Xiao Mei, who seemed to have thousands of words to say but didn't say a single word when he left. Chen Hao looked at each face and a faint, knowing smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He lightly waved his hand towards the distance and then suddenly pulled the curtain. A small knife and a small rectangular piece of wood strangely appeared in Chen Hao's hands. The small knife was shining, causing Helian Wuzi's gaze slightly turned to the side. She saw that Chen Hao was holding a knife in one hand and a piece of wood in the other, staring blankly at the wood in a daze. Helian Wuzi's mouth twitched. Go. Suddenly, Chen Hao's gaze didn't change at all. He was still staring blankly at the wood in his hand, but his right hand that was holding the knife suddenly moved. That small knife suddenly made a slight whoosh-whoosh sound. Rays of cold light emitted from his hand. That small knife seemed to have a mind of its own. It actually jumped and spun strangely between Chen Hao's fingers. Sometimes it was fast and sometimes it was slow, as if it was dancing to the note. The whoosh-whoosh sound was the accompaniment. Helian Wuzi couldn't help but widen her eyes. Moyui, who was in a state of infatuation, was also attracted by the small knife in Chen Hao's hand. He completely forgot about his lover, who was still waiting for him to touch her. Chen Hao's expression became more and more focused. His left hand that was holding the wood didn't move at all, as if it was in a state of absolute stillness. Compared with the increasingly dreamy knife light in his right hand, one still and one moving, it contrasted nicely. After a full 2 minutes, Chen Hao's eyes suddenly shrunk. The flickering knife light suddenly fell on the wood in his left hand. Immediately, it made a hissing sound. Small pieces of wood floated down from his hand. A piece of rotten wood actually showed vitality at an astonishing speed, becoming curvy and exquisite. What made Helian Wuzi and Moyui incomparably shocked was that Chen Hao obviously didn't use any elemental power. That wood was obviously a hard sandalwood, but under his knife it was like tofu, without the slightest hindrance. What a sharp knife! This was the common thought of Helian Wuzi and Moyui. But what they didn't know was that the knife wasn't as sharp as they imagined. It wasn't even any different from an ordinary knife. What was sharp was Chen Hao's heart. Chen Hao's mind seemed to have completely integrated into the texture of the hard sandalwood. He could clearly sense the extremely fine texture. The knife didn't need much strength to easily cut through the texture. 1 month's time, he used an entire month's time, but he still hadn't broken through to this realm. But now, because of that moment of concentration, he had reached the first realm that his father had mentioned. Eye, hand, knife, heart, object, 5 daos as one. Under this kind of subtle state of mind, Chen Hao seemed to have integrated into nature. The aura around his body became ethereal and illusory. Helian Wuzi and Moyui clearly saw Chen Hao, but they felt that they were in 2 different worlds. Only the fluttering wood shavings and the gradually revealing outline of the pattern that became clearer and clearer made them understand that Chen Hao was carving. One after another, lifelike figures were born under Chen Hao's knife. Mother, sister, brother, Guzi, Xiao Ling Xiao Jishan, Xiao Jifei. Just now, Chen Hao saw their appearances appear one after another on the wood that wasn't much bigger than a palm. Their expressions, postures, facial features. Although there wasn't any color rendering, as long as anyone saw these figures, it was as if they could see everyone's mood. Chen Hao's saber had given them emotions and spirituality. He had used the saber to realize each of their emotions. This was truly lifelike. Chen Hao could only do this if he could see through each of their emotions and state of mind. Hiss, hiss, another figure appeared in front of Moyui and Helian Wuzi's eyes. A graceful and exquisite body, as well as a face that didn't have any facial features, gradually appeared. With their understanding of Chen Hao, just by seeing this figure, they were sure that the last remaining piece of sandalwood was to be carved into his personal instructor, Xiao Mei, but Chen Hao's smooth and flowing blade suddenly trembled slightly when it descended upon his facial features, and then it stopped. A wisp of bewilderment and puzzlement seemed to flash within his eyes as he stared blankly at the last step of the process, yet he was unable to draw his blade again. Chen Hao slowly closed his eyes, as if he was lost in thought. After a full 2 minutes, the corners of his mouth revealed a slightly bitter and vicissitude smile. As if there was no one around, he muttered 3 words, "Silly girl." At this moment, no matter if it was Helian Wuzi or Emoyui, their minds trembled. They felt that in front of Chen Hao they were like children. Especially when they looked at Chen Hao's slightly immature face, it made the two feel extremely strange. Soon after, Chen Hao's knife fell. Xiao Mei wasn't very beautiful, but was full of charm, gentleness, and affection. Under Chen Hao's knife, a charming face was born who, with a flash of the knife disappeared from Chen Hao's hand. Chen Hao held up the wooden carving and gently blew off the fine wood shavings on the wooden carving. With a gentle gaze and a faint smile, he stared at the lifelike faces and whispered in his heart, "No matter if it is now or in the future, my glory and glory will be shared by all of you. In this life, I will no longer be lonely. This feeling is really good. The first part is better. Please recommend, collect, thank you." Chapter 66. Little guys, about 900 li away is Lansang Province. We should be able to meet them before midnight tonight. Sit tight, this old man is talking like a youngster. I haven't driven a carriage for a long time. Ha ha. Go, go, go. Following the old man's shout, the 4 horses' hooves suddenly flew, and their speed suddenly increased by more than 2 times. The originally stable carriage also began to shake violently. Chen Hao and the other 2 hurriedly grasped the armrests, and their gazes looked at the old man driving the carriage. This old man was the expert Fang Yuan sent to pick them up. He looked to be in his 50s, with a kind face and a smile on his face. One look and you could tell he was a smooth and slick old man. There was no trace of elemental energy around him, but Chen Hao and the other 2 knew this old man was an expert of intent. Even Li Ran was respectful towards him. Originally, Li Ran had arranged for a coachman, but he was rejected by the old man and personally became the coachman. "Why are you 3 little guys like a taciturn gourd?" After the old man spoke, Chen Hao and the other 2 didn't have any response. It was as if the forthright old man couldn't stand this kind of oppressive feeling. He turned his head and looked at Chen Hao and the other 2, lecturing them. "This is not good. When you go out, you must learn to make friends with all the heroes in the world. One more friend means one more path. Especially you 3, you all came from Yunzhou, you must maintain this kind of relationship. When we reach the Royal New Show Hall, you can take care of each other. Otherwise, with your strength, you will all be bullied." Ha ha! The old man drove the carriage, while talking to Chen Hao and the other 2. Royal New Show Hall? Bullied? This time, when the 3 heard the old man's words, they were slightly stunned. They were clearly shocked by the information contained in the old man's word. Moue naturally looked at Chen Hao, and even Helian Wuzi was no exception. Although she had conflicts with Chen Hao was the core of the 3 of them. There was no need to doubt this point. Before they set off, their patriarchs had instructed them to treat Chen Hao as their core and befriend Chen Hao. After all, they only had this opportunity because of Chen Hao. To put it bluntly, they were the result of Fang Yuan rewarding Cloud Continent because of Chen Hao. Of course, the most important reason was that Moue was a taciturn person. Helian Wuzi was a character who was as silent as a block of ice. Ahem. Senior, what is the Royal New Show Hall? Aren't we going to the Will Guild? Chen Hao, the only one who seemed normal, coughed lightly and asked. You still don't know where you're going? The old man seemed a little surprised, but then he understood immediately and said, Yes, your Yunzhou is just a small county. This time, you have the opportunity because President Fang personally gave you this opportunity. The Club of Intentions is only a management organization for our Zhenyuan kingdom, not an organization for cultivating talent. Oh, it seems that President Fang accepted you as his personal disciple, right? It's like this, Chen Hao replied. President Fang's personal disciples in the Royal New Show Hall, if not 100, there are at least 80. Anyone who joins the Royal New Show Hall is basically President Fang's personal disciple. Don't think that President Fang can watch over you and teach you every day, haha. However, your physique with both will and martial arts is indeed quite rare, at least it has never appeared in our Zhenyuan kingdom. And your martial talent seems to be even higher, so it's not strange at all for President Fang to accept you as his personal disciple. The one who strikes first gains the advantage. Otherwise, President Fang's sworn enemy, also an old friend, might snatch you away from President Fang, haha. Senior is overpraising me, Chen Hao said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Whether or not I'm overpraising you is still undetermined. It still depends on your future development, the old man said calmly. After a slight pause, he turned his head and glanced at Helian Wuzi and Emoyui, saying, the little girl's martial talent can also be considered quite good. In the Royal New Show Hall you can at least be considered above average, but your family background is too poor. The cultivation conditions that your family originally provided for you are incomparable to those of the other disciples. After you enter the Royal New Show Hall, you should be able to perform even better. As for you, little guy, old man, to tell you the truth, don't be discouraged. Your aptitude is considered good in Yunzhou, but in the Royal New Show Hall, you should be at the bottom. President Fang chose you because he fancied the sword intent in your heart. You can only be considered as barely qualified to enter the New Show Hall. Your future achievements will depend on whether or not the sword intent in your heart can be awakened. To become a true swordsman, you are very strong. Swordsmen and bladesmen are existences above pure martial artists. Within the same realm, for example, between a sword emperor and a martial emperor, a sword emperor's battle strength is 3 times stronger than a martial emperor's. Haha, little guy, do your best. Swordsman. I will definitely become a swordsman. Hearing the old man's words, Emoyui tightly grasped the large sword in his hand. His eyes flashed with a trace of passion as he said in a deep voice, yes, not bad, your spirit is praiseworthy. Haha. Senior, are we all going to enter the Royal New Show Hall? Chen Hao asked again. Yes. Don't call me senior, senior. Old man, emperor, rise. The emperor of the royal family, rise. The Royal New Show Hall's Uncle Guard occasionally takes on new members like you. Yes, this uncle has many nicknames. In the New Show Hall, I am very famous. When the time comes, you will naturally know. Haha. Every year at this time, it is the time for the top forces in the 37 provinces of our kingdom to select members of the New Show Hall. Our kingdom has a population of more than 1 billion, but only about 300 people are qualified to enter the Royal New Show Hall every year. On average, there are only 10 people per province. The Royal New Show Hall is a rather mysterious existence. It's not strange that a small county like your Yunzhou doesn't know about it. And the 3 of you are the lucky ones personally selected by President Fang. You will know about this very soon. Telling you now isn't a big deal. Haha. Huang Qi's words caused Chen Hao and the other 2 to be slightly shocked. In a kingdom with a population of more than 1 billion, only 300 people were qualified to enter the Royal New Show Hall every year. Even if the old, weak, women, and children were excluded, the ratio was still 1 in 10,000. One could imagine how fierce the competition was. At the same time, Huang Qi's enthusiastic and casual words also made Chen Hao feel that this old man wasn't bragging. He was probably an awesome person in the entire Jinyuan kingdom. Especially when he talked about President Fong, he seemed to be very casual. He didn't have the kind of reverence that Li Ran had for a god. As for the royal surname, although it wasn't the royal surname of the Jinyuan kingdom, it was basically forbidden in any country. At most, it could be changed to Huang. However, this old man's surname was Huang. When he introduced himself, he even brazenly said that he was the emperor of the royal family. This made one ponder deeply. Second update. Wushan was really miserable. First, he got stuck. Second, he had a cold and cough. Wushan didn't think about telling people that he was sick. He hated people who took time off due to illness the most. Therefore, after he got stuck and didn't write the second update yesterday, he immediately posted a single chapter saying that it was the third update today. After he finished, Wushan had a headache. It was his daughter's birthday today. He was scolded by his wife and felt extremely ashamed. Fortunately, his wife was also chasing after Proud Heaven and understood his feelings. He could only let his daughter suffer. This birthday, I only accompanied her for lunch. I will post the third update tonight. It will probably be a little late. The number of words in today's chapters is a little low. I hope you don't blame Wushan. It's really not easy being a father. Thank you. Number 16. Tragedy? Chuan Liang Wu Zi, Tianhen Songjing, A Dream of Old Scenery, Feng Bai, Passionate Love like ice raging fire, swaying drunken red, and number 17. Dust 369, Chuan Liang Wu Zi, Luo Shi. Passionate Love low-key little devil, MOCAE for the donations and support these 2 days. Thank you. Chapter 67. Along the way, Huang Qi's mouth was never idle. Some were asked by Chen Hao, some were answered by Huang Qi himself. Gradually, even Moyue and Helian Wuzi would occasionally interrupt to ask questions. When they arrived at the Lansang province in the middle of the night, Chen Hao and the other two had a more comprehensive understanding of the Royal New Show Hall. Yali Mountain was definitely huge. In Huang Qi's words, the three of them were undoubtedly at the bottom of the list. To be able to stand out among the superpowers of the province, the weakest of them was a 9th-grade martial master. Most of them were martial kings. As for Chen Hao and the other two, they were only martial masters. After the Cloud State martial gathering, Helian Wuzi and Moyue had both broken through their original realms after a month of consolidation. Helian Wuzi had advanced to a 9th-grade martial master and Moyue had advanced to an 8th-grade martial master. However, Chen Hao, in terms of realms, was barely at the peak of a 5th-grade martial master. In Huang Qi's words, this was breaking the record of the lowest level of the Royal New Show Hall. Of course, Chen Hao's age also broke the record of the lowest level. After the Cloud Province martial gathering, Chen Hao did not stop cultivating. However, after the strange change in his mind, after swallowing the black box and entering the illusion, Chen Hao seemed to have returned to the time when he was in the Demon Cloud mountain range. The inherent Yuan power did not change, but the Yuan power of heaven and earth that he absorbed during cultivation once again mysteriously disappeared. In the past, Chen Hao did not understand. However, now, he was certain that there was another existence in his mind. After a period of time, he could only ignore it and not think about it. Chen Hao believed that there would be a day when this existence would appear. Of course, there was another reason why Chen Hao was so open-minded. It was because this mysterious existence didn't seem to have any ill intent towards him. On the contrary, as long as Chen Hao fell asleep, the terrifying sword light would appear in his mind. Moreover, it seemed to be consciously allowing Chen Hao to comprehend it. Chen Hao's state of mind couldn't help but fuse with it every time, causing Chen Hao's comprehension of the sword Dao to deepen. However, it was precisely this kind of enormous pressure that made the three of them even more determined to fight. Chern Hao, in particular, was looking forward to the life he was about to face. Through Huang Qi's words, Chern Hao understood that after entering the Royal New Show Hall, his cultivation was basically completely free. This was exactly what he wanted. Sigh. It's already late at night. Why can't I see any kittens or puppies? The pitch-black official road was sandwiched between the continuous mountain ranges. The mountain wind blew intermittently, like the howling of wolves, bringing with it a hint of terror. It was the time when the night was dark and the wind was strong. Although there weren't any strong beasts in the mountains, no one wanted to meet them. What's more, bandits and mountain kings were very popular everywhere. Therefore, during the night there were almost no pedestrians. Those who dared to travel at this time were either due to a malfunction that delayed the time to enter the city, or because they were skilled and daring. Huang Qi was obviously the latter. He even spoke with a hint of dissatisfaction. After a day of continuous galloping, although they had luxury goods like fasting pills to provide energy, their speed still slowed down. Fortunately, they were only about 100 miles away from the Lansang provincial capital. Little guy, you're quite spirited. You're full of energy without the slightest bit of weakness. Your potential is really not bad. Huang Qi turned his head and lightly scanned with his mental energy. He clearly sensed the condition of Chern Hao and the other two. At this moment, Chern Hao's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He frowned slightly. In the depths of his mind, a familiar and strange fluctuation quietly appeared in Chern Hao's heart. Furthermore, it was a little stronger. What's wrong? Huang Qi noticed that Chern Hao was acting strangely and asked curiously. The drowsy Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui also looked at Chern Hao. Cough cough. Uncle Huang, I need to go to the toilet. What Huang Qi didn't expect, Helian Wuzi frowned slightly, and Mo Yui was a little surprised was that Chern Hao actually said such a sentence. As a martial artist, and a martial master at that, although eating, drinking, and going to the toilet were still very necessary, for matters like going to the toilet, it wasn't a problem at all to hold it in for a few days and nights. After all, the body had been tempered by elemental energy, and the tenacity and flexibility of the organs in the body were very strong. Can't hold it in? Huang Qi asked, a little amused. Can I hold it in? Will I still be so spirited? In front of Helian Wuzi, this stunning little girl, Chern Hao didn't feel the slightest bit embarrassed and said very calmly. Big one or small one? Small one, come to the front of the carriage to take care of it. In another hour, we'll reach the Lansang province. Huang Qi said. Mo Yui didn't think much of it, but when Helian Wuzi heard Huang Qi's words, she frowned and fiercely glared at Chern Hao before turning her face to the side. Big one. Uncle Huang, you guys continue forward. Wait for me at the front. I'll find a place to take care of it and then follow. It seems like I have diarrhea, it might take a little longer. How can that be? If you encounter a demonic beast, you'll be in danger. Shh. Huang Qi said as he pulled the reins and stopped the carriage. Go quickly, finish it quickly. Just by the side of the road, we'll wait for you here. No, I know you guys are nearby, I won't be able to do it. I have diarrhea, it's very smelly. You guys should go further away. If there's a problem, I'll call for help. Chern Hao said as he jumped off the carriage. He held his stomach with one hand and waved at Huang Qi with the other. Just wait for me 2 miles away. Go, I can't hold it in anymore. There's no powerful demonic beast near the official road. I can easily take care of a peak level 4 demonic beast, you brat. Alright, if there's a situation, immediately call for help, Chern Hao replied. As he spoke, his gaze swept back and forth, as if he was looking for a place to place a mine. His figure flashed, and as fast as lightning, he rushed into the forest beside the official road. So disgusting. Sitting in the carriage, Helian Wuzi's face was slightly red as she said in a low voice. Ha ha! Huang Qi laughed and waved his horsewhip. Even he didn't think that Chern Hao was bluffing. Instead, he felt that Chern Hao, this little guy, was very interesting. Especially Chern Hao's lightning-like figure and his tone when he said that he could easily take care of a peak level 4 demonic beast. This made him admire him very much. A peak level 4 demonic beast was equivalent to a peak level 9 martial master. Furthermore, a demonic beast's special physique was usually even stronger. And Chern Hao, who was not even 13 years old, had such battle strength. Obviously, it wasn't a bluff. Since Huang Qi came to pick up the three, he naturally understood the situation of the three. Swoosh, swoosh, after Chern Hao entered the forest, he didn't move quickly at first. However, after the carriage traveled a distance of 300 meters, he immediately retracted his aura. His entire person suddenly became silent. Like a ghost, he quickly moved in the direction he sensed in his mind. There wasn't any fluctuation of origin power. There was only the strongest concealment technique in ancient Chinese martial arts. His rapidly moving figure seemed to have blended into the forest, cleverly avoiding every blade of grass and leaf as he advanced. Third update. Please collect, recommend. Thank you. Chapter 68. Gradually, the fluctuations in Chern Hao's mind became clearer. When this feeling appeared in the past, Chern Hao thought that he was naturally sensitive to spiritual herbs, but now he knew that it was because of the mysterious existence in his mind. It was all thanks to this mysterious existence that he could constantly obtain spiritual herbs in the Demon Cloud mountain range. This was an abnormal existence that was equivalent to a treasure hunting tool. This time, the feeling was so strong that Chern Hao did not hesitate to use the excuse of needing to go to the toilet to fool Huang Qi and the others. By doing so, even if Chern Hao was delayed for too long, Huang Qi would find him, and it would be easier to explain. Bumping into a spiritual herb while taking a dump could only be considered super lucky. If he said that he had sensed a spiritual herb in the carriage, it would be too shocking. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Chern Hao moved forward quickly. As he got closer, the fluctuations in his mind became more and more intense. This made Chern Hao very excited because the stronger the fluctuations, the stronger the spiritual herb he sensed. However, at the same time, he became anxious. At this moment, he had been running for more than 10 minutes and was at least 10 miles away from the official road. However, other than the fluctuations becoming stronger, the destination was still locked in one direction and there was no end. This was something that had never happened before. One had to know that although his sensing range for spiritual herbs was much higher than that of ordinary people, the distance was still very limited. What did it mean to be 10 miles? Moreover, he did not know how far it would take to reach it. Why isn't this kid back yet? I'll go take a look, you guys wait here. After Huang Qi drove the carriage a few hundred meters forward, he stopped at the side of the official road and waited for Chern Hao. However, after waiting for a full 20 minutes, Huang Qi was a little anxious. After saying that, he flew into the air and rushed toward the place where Chern Hao had entered the forest. His powerful mental power also spread out in all directions. His speed was countless times faster than Chern Hao's, but what surprised Huang Qi was that he could not sense Chern Hao's aura within 1,000 feet radius. Strange. Huang Qi frowned slightly and suddenly shouted, "Chern Hao, where are you, kid?" The majestic mental power transmitted his voice far away. As long as Chern Hao was within 10 miles, he would definitely be able to hear him. However, there was no response. Chern Hao seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Even the places he passed by did not leave behind a trace of his aura. This was a little strange. One had to know that Huang Qi was a willpower expert who was even stronger than Li Ran. His spiritual perception was definitely quite powerful. As long as it was an aura that he was familiar with, he would be able to detect it within a short period of time. But just now, Chern Hao had clearly entered the forest from here, but at this moment, not a trace of his aura remained. What was going on? Huang Qi did not dare to hesitate any longer. He instantly pushed his mental energy to the limit and flew through the air like lightning. He sensed the aura fluctuations in the surroundings and began to search for Chen Hao. Whoosh whoosh, an hour later, Chen Hao was still going deeper and deeper. He was getting more and more excited and anxious. He knew very well that Huang Qi and the other two had probably come looking for him by now. However, even after running at full speed for an hour, he still hadn't reached his destination. The fluctuations in his mind were getting more and more intense. Phew! After another 10 minutes, Chen Hao finally climbed to the top of the mountain. The mountain wind was whistling. Chen Hao, who was running at high speed, suddenly broke out in cold sweat and stopped abruptly. This seemingly gentle mountain peak was actually like Heavenly Road Mountain. On the other side was an extremely steep cliff. Motherf **, are you playing with me? At this moment, Chen Hao was enraged. He had used such a shameless method of defecating to run over. Furthermore, this would definitely cause Huang Qi to come back and look for him. However, after running with all his might for more than an hour, all he got in return was a cliff. Moreover, if it weren't for his amazing eyesight and the ability to see in the dark, he would have rushed over the cliff and fallen to his death. How could he not be angry? Hiss, hiss, hiss. In response to Chen Hao, invisible tentacle-like energy automatically spread out from between his eyebrows. Unlike when he devoured the black box, this time, Chen Hao's mind seemed to be connected with these tentacles, causing his perception to suddenly be strangely distorted and rapidly spread toward the cliff. To Chen Hao's surprise, right at this moment, the scene before his eyes seemed to have changed. The towering cliff had vanished, and it was replaced by a barren round mountain that emanated strands of milky white light. Moreover, there were flat rocks before his eyes. Chen Hao's eyes widened in surprise, and then he closed his eyes and rubbed them hard. When he opened his eyes again, it was still not a cliff. This strange scene caused Chen Hao to be unable to distinguish which one was an illusion. The only thing he could be sure of was that he was standing on solid ground. Chen Hao closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and carefully stretched out his foot. A strange wave came from his foot, as if his foot had passed through a layer of barrier and stepped into another world. Finally, the solid feeling of touching the ground came, proving that what Chen Hao saw at this moment was real. Boom! The tentacles that unintentionally spread out also completely extended in. At this moment, the waves in Chen Hao's mind became extremely violent, causing Chen Hao to muster up his courage and step in. Hiss hiss hiss, when Chen Hao's body completely passed through the barrier, the tentacle-like existence between his eyebrows suddenly began to move. At the same time, the majestic and terrifying energy, like a flash flood, was not under Chen Hao's control and surged into the space between his eyebrows. At this moment, Chen Hao's mind felt a terrifying suction force, and before he could react, it was completely absorbed into his mind. There was no sky, no earth, only the brilliant sword light. A huge sword that emitted an ancient aura, and the sword body was covered with complicated runes, as if it was connected to the starry sky of the universe. The sword tip was facing up, and the sword hilt was facing down. The entire space revolved with it, was born with it, and was destroyed with it. It was the master of this space, and Chen Hao seemed to be the incarnation of the sword. His body was the sword, and his heart was the sword. He had fallen into a wonderful state. His body naturally sat cross-legged on the peak of the round mountain, and endless heaven and earth energy entered the space between his eyebrows at a terrifying speed. At the same time, the round mountain below him rapidly shrank. This situation was as if Chen Hao was the mountain, such a powerful and terrifying fluctuation, but no one could see it. Even Huang Qi, who was flying high in the sky and pushing his mental strength to the limit, did not sense the slightest fluctuation. Chen Hao bathed in the brilliant sword light, and did not move at all. Time slowly passed. After 2 hours, the round mountain finally disappeared completely. Chun Hao was sitting cross-legged on the ground. Explosions could be heard from 100 feet away from him. It was as if his chi cover had been blown apart. Then, Chun Hao's figure gradually appeared. The mountain was still a mountain, but it was the extremely ordinary mountain that Chun Hao had seen before. The cliff was no longer there, and the round mountain was no longer there. Only Chun Hao was there. Slowly opening his eyes, Chun Hao's eyes flashed with intense shock. Chun Hao. Chun Hao. Just at this moment, Huang Qi's voice, which was filled with mental strength and with a trace of anxiety, floated into Chun Hao's ears. "Shut up!" Chun Hao roared in his mind, and with a bang, he jumped up, and immediately gathered his mental strength, and shouted, "Uncle Huang! I'm here, quickly come and save me. P.S. Thank you for yesterday's news. Tragedy? Passionate love. Chuan Liang Wuzi Mo Qingyi Yuling? Mu E Book Friend 120-50423-320-5483, and 6 friends gave their support. In the morning, I went to the hospital for an infusion, and was delayed for more than 2 hours. Sorry for the late update." Chapter 69. Chun Hao's voice carried a trace of fear as it floated from behind Huang Qi, causing his rapidly moving figure to stop abruptly. After an entire hour, he could not sense any trace of Chun Hao's aura. He could only use the place where Chun Hao had left as the core and search in a radial pattern. Although his cultivation was high and his speed was fast, the range of his mental strength was limited. After searching for an hour, he had already confirmed that something had happened to Chun Hao. It was very likely that he had encountered a rare flying demonic beast, and it was much higher than Chun Hao's realm. Otherwise, he would not have disappeared without a trace. This was a disgrace. He was a Grand Emperor Will, and a rank 9 Will Emperor Peak at that, but he could not even protect a little fellow. How could he report back? Especially when this little fellow was not Helian Wu Zi, nor was it Moue, but the one Fang Yuan valued the most, Chun Hao, the one who had the rare physique of dual cultivation of will and martial arts, and had astonishing talent in cultivation. If he was alive, he had to see the person; if he was dead, he had to see the corpse. Things had already reached this stage. Huang Qi could only carefully search every inch of the place. Even if he could find a trace of clothes, bones, or blood, he would still be able to give a little bit of an explanation. After an hour, he shouted Chun Hao's name, from small to large circles, spreading outwards. He was dozens of li away from the place where Chun Hao had drilled into the forest. Even with his high cultivation, after circling around like a donkey for an hour, his mental strength was on the verge of exhaustion. If he persevered for a little longer, he would have to give up even if he did not want to. But at this time, Chun Hao's cry for help suddenly came from behind him. How could Huang Qi not be surprised? Of course, he was even more surprised. Swoosh! His body immediately turned into a flash of lightning, rapidly moving towards the direction of the voice. "Uncle Huang, save me, save me!" What made Huang Qi stare with wide eyes was that the voice was clearly below him, but he could not see Chun Hao's figure. There was only a mountain peak. Even Chun Hao's voice was faintly discernible, sometimes strong and sometimes weak. Spirit lock bewitching array? Huang Qi's eyes shone with a bright light as he stared at the mountain below him. He took a deep breath and said in shock, "May I know which senior is here?" "This junior is from the imperial family, Your Majesty. Please show mercy and let this child go." Hiss hiss, as Huang Qi spoke, the formation that trapped Chun Hao suddenly fluctuated. It immediately dissipated like smoke, and Chun Hao's seemingly dazed figure appeared before Huang Qi's eyes. "Uncle Emperor, you're finally here!" Chun Hao exclaimed in surprise. "Thank you, Senior." Huang Qi cupped his fists and said respectfully. After saying that, He landed beside Chen Hao, grabbed him, and flew into the air. At the same time, he said loudly, "Thank you, Senior." Chen Hao looked at Huang Qi with a strange expression. He wanted to say something, but Huang Qi sent out a mental power to stop Chen Hao. He quickly returned in the direction of the carriage. "How is it? What a simple matter." When Huang Qi flew back to the carriage with Chen Hao, an old voice strangely appeared in Chen Hao's mind. It sounded a little smug. "Shut up. You're taking all the benefits and I'm not getting any. You even made me act," Chen Hao said angrily. "Short-sighted. The old man being able to awaken is a great benefit to you. Without the old man, you would have died a long time ago." "Nonsense. Without you, I would have broken through to martial master long ago. You stole my energy and disrespected your elders, and you still have the nerve to say that?" Cough cough. "I only borrowed a little bit of energy. Without it, the old man wouldn't have been able to sense your situation. This is necessary. Moreover, didn't you realize that when you needed to improve, the old man wouldn't lend you his energy? Moreover, when you were fighting with Li Yuan, without the old man's help, you wouldn't have been able to become the core. The kindness of a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. This is one of your maxims. Alright, the old man is still very weak. Do as you see fit." Chen Hao still had countless questions to ask, but the old man left quickly and disappeared from Chen Hao's mind. "Shut up and don't make a sound. Go, go, go." After Huang Qi threw Chen Hao into the carriage, he said sternly. After he finished speaking, he fiercely whipped the horse, as if he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to leave if he was too slow. Even though he had many questions to ask Chen Hao, he held them back for now. Inside the carriage, Moyui and Helian Wuzi also looked at Chen Hao strangely. An hour later, when dawn broke and the red clouds gradually appeared in the east, under Huang Qi's ferocious whip, the vast Lansong province appeared in their line of sight. It was also at this time that Huang Qi slowed down. He turned his head and stared at Chen Hao. "Kid, what happened? How did you poop so far away? How did you meet such an expert?" "Uncle Huang, I also didn't want to. I just took off my pants and didn't have time to poop when an old man suddenly appeared and scolded me. He said something about polluting the environment and wanted to punish me. Without any explanation, he grabbed me and flew away. His speed seemed to be faster than you, Uncle Huang. Then you saw the place where I was. I was trapped inside and shouted until my throat was hoarse, but it was useless. There were cliffs on all sides, and I was scared to death. That old man said that I would be trapped for at least 3 hours as a punishment for urinating and defecating everywhere. I haven't pooped yet. That old man really deserves to die. Isn't it just pooping and pooping?" Chen Hao said as he held his stomach again, his face full of pain and confusion. "Shut up. Kid, don't talk nonsense." Huang Qi hurriedly stopped him and said, "You came back alive because of that senior's kindness. What's this little punishment? It's really strange. When did our Zhenyuan kingdom have such an expert? He actually lived in seclusion in this place. Brat, you almost harmed old man. You pooped, hold it in. Hold it in until you reach the great thousand city. F***ck. It can't be? Uncle Huang. An expert at the level of divine intent. At the very least, he has to be at the level of divine intent to be able to use his super strong mental power to form the spirit-locking bewildering array. You pooped in the territory of a divine intent. You deserve to be punished." Chen Hao looked at Huang Qi with a face full of surprise. Moyui, who still didn't know what happened, had a face full of surprise. Helian Wuzi's beautiful and cold little face, other than surprise, also looked at Chen Hao with a gaze that carried a trace of schadenfreude. The corners of her mouth slightly hooked up, as if she was a little happy. She said in a low voice like a mosquito, "Serves you right, you poop to death, cough cough." Hearing Helian Wuzi's words, Moyui instantly coughed twice and lowered his head. His expression seemed to be focused and gentle as he once again began to stroke his sword wife. This guy wasn't good with words, but that faintly twitching lower abdomen made Chen Hao even despise him. F***ck. He's obviously a coquettish guy. Chen Hao fiercely glared at Helian Wuzi. Helian Wuzi wasn't afraid at all. She raised her little face and snorted at Chen Hao. If I can't hold it in, I'll poop in front of you and stink you to death. Chen Hao's voice was also like a mosquito's, but every word was clearly said as he looked straight at Helian Wuzi. Ha ha ha. Moyui finally couldn't hold it in anymore and spurted out. He hugged his stomach and laughed out loud. You brat. Huang Qi also looked at Chen Hao a little speechlessly and no longer paid attention to the three people who had a strange relationship. Helian Wuzi was so angry that her face was flushed red. P.S. Second update. Please add, recommend, thank you. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.